Chapter 1196. The other person's terrifying and ruthless eyes were colder than cold-blooded animals. Anyone who was glanced at would feel panic. The eyes didn't seem to know him at all. Yu Qianzhou was now quite doubtful whether this person was Wen Lanfeng. Not only was his appearance more strange, but his cultivation was also different from Wen Lanfeng's. But if it really was Wen Lanfeng, why did it seem as if he didn't recognize him? Could it be that he was suppressed by me in the past and now wants to take revenge? Yu Qianzhou was prepared to leave as soon as he noticed that something was wrong. Wen Lanfeng? There was a trace of doubt in the man's cold eyes. He looked at Yu Qianzhou and asked, "Who am I? Do you know me? Why do you also call me Wen Lanfeng?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He didn't understand what the other person meant. While he was stunned, the fire soul mysterious weapon dragged him to avoid the fatal light at the bottom of the sea. After stopping, the more Yu Qianzhou thought about the other person's words, the more he felt something was wrong. The other person didn't know who he was? It's not convenient for me to talk here. Can you let me go to the island and talk slowly? Yu Qianzhou tried to ask. Seeing that the other person didn't object, he let the fire soul mysterious weapon take him to the island. That person looked at him with a longing gaze, filled with the desire to know. Yu Qianzhou looked at him and carefully sized him up again and again, scratching his chin. He couldn't figure out if this person really didn't know who he was or if he was just pretending. On second thought, with the other person's cultivation, if he wanted to deal with him, he didn't need to beat around the bush. So he boldly flew over slowly and carefully stood on the same tree with the man. After carefully identifying him face to face again, he found that it was indeed Wen Lanfeng. Listening to what you just said, did someone also call you Wen Lanfeng? Yu Qianzhou asked with some curiosity. The man waved to the valley on the side of the mountain and said, "He said I was Wen Lanfeng and I killed him. He said I had been possessed by the devil and said I was the sword demon. What does it mean to be possessed by the devil? Am I Wen Lanfeng or sword devil?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned again. He realized that his brain couldn't keep up with the other party's train of thought when talking to such a person. He looked in the direction of the other party's finger and only saw a small rocky valley. Perhaps it was more appropriate to describe it as a rocky valley, but he didn't see anyone else. He can still speak after being killed by you? What the hell is this? Yu Qianzhou scratched his head awkwardly and smiled. Can I see who you're talking about? As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared without a trace. He was already standing in the valley, nodding at him as if he was asking him to go over. Yu Qianzhou nodded and flew over with the fire soul profound weapon. Looking at the direction of his finger, he saw a shallow cave on the stone mountain wall. At a glance he could see the bottom of the cave. There was a body that had been dried into a human body sitting cross-legged with its head down. Although Yu Qianzhou didn't see the person's face clearly, he was shocked when he saw that there was only one arm. He quickly flashed into the cave. He walked to the corpse and squatted down with a dignified expression. There was a big penetrating wound in the abdomen of the dried corpse. He bent down to look at the face of the corpse. Although the face was dried, he could vaguely recognize who it was. As he expected, it was Li Duxing who had left for a long time. Yu Qianzhou stood up silently and slowly turned to walk out of the cave. Looking at Wen Lanfeng standing on the rock in front of him, he sighed softly. Now he could confirm that the terrifying master in front of him was Wen Lanfeng, and he had roughly guessed something. From Wen Lanfeng's words, he could tell that Li Duxing was killed by Wen Lanfeng. The reason why Li Duxing was killed by Wen Lanfeng was that Wen Lanfeng had lost his memory due to Qigong deviation, which was the sword devil that Li Duxing mentioned before his death. As a result, Wen Lanfeng, who had lost his memory, was confused about whether his name was Wen Lanfeng or sword devil. Yu Qianzhou didn't expect that the two people who had left would have such a thing. One was killed by the other, and the other lost his memory due to Qigong deviation and became a terrifying master. Yu Qianzhou had no idea what had happened between the two of them for them to end up here. He wanted to ask Wen Lanfeng the reason, but he knew that given Wen Lanfeng's current state, he would not be able to get any answers. Am I Wen Lanfeng or sword devil? Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue hair fluttered in the wind as he stood motionlessly on the rock. He seemed to want to know who he was. Yu Qianzhou looked back at Li Duxing, who had been dead for a long time in the cave. When he looked at Wen Lanfeng again, he didn't have the slightest fear. At this time, no matter how high Wen Lanfeng's cultivation was, he was just a poor man who lost his memory in Yu Qianzhou's eyes. He smiled faintly and said, "Your name is Wen Lanfeng. Sword devil is your nickname." The light blue cloud pattern between Wen Lanfeng's eyebrows loosened, and he showed a look of sudden realization. He nodded and said, "So my name is Wen Lanfeng, and Sword Devil is my nickname. Damn it. Such a master became a fool. Xianxia felt that it was not worth it, but his eyes gradually brightened. Wasn't this the trump card to deal with San Yi and the others? He flashed to the front of Wenlanfeng and said seriously, I'm your friend Xianxia, do you remember me? Xianxia? Wenlanfeng's blue eyes were no longer cold but full of blankness. He shook his head and said, I don't know you. Xianxia was embarrassed and waved his hand, it doesn't matter. I'll take you home. When you go back you will remember me. He was determined to take Wenlanfeng back to deal with San Yi and the others. Home? Wenlanfeng's eyes were still blank. He looked around and said, this is my home. I'm very familiar with it. You don't need to take me home. Xianxia was speechless. Although Wenlanfeng was an idiot, it was really difficult to fool him. After a while, he coughed solemnly and said, Wenlanfeng, have you even forgotten Lu Yanqing? Wenlanfeng was immediately stunned by these words. His eyes flashed with an extremely chaotic look and he suddenly murmured, Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing. Sure enough, he was still the idiot. He didn't remember anyone, but he still remembered that Lu Yanqing. Xianxia saw that it was useful to bring out Lu Yanqing. He was secretly happy and continued to provoke, yes. It's Lu Yanqing. Have you forgotten her? The place with Lu Yanqing is your real home. Lu Yanqing. My real home. Lu Yanqing. Wenlanfeng was still muttering to herself, but what made Xianxia stunned was that Wenlanfeng had actually cried silently. Drops of crystal clear light blue tears gently slid down from her eyes, quietly slipping down. Xianxia suddenly felt a little embarrassed to continue to provoke him. Wenlanfeng noticed that he was crying. He raised his hand and stretched out 2 fingers to catch a drop of light blue tears. Under the refraction of the sun, the tears shone with a magnificent blue light. He asked, what is this? Why are my eyes watering uncontrollably? Xianxia was speechless. Wenlanfeng continued to ask, why does my calm heart suddenly have a very sad feeling? Why does the name Lu Yanqing make me feel so warm? Why does this name make my heart unable to calm down again? I seem to be very familiar with this person, don't I? As he spoke, the light blue tears in his eyes continued to fall quietly. Xianxia nodded and stared at him with a wry smile. Do you want to see her? Lu Yanqing, my real home. Wenlanfeng suddenly nodded vigorously and said, I want to see her very much. Please take me to see her. I want to go back to my real home. Then let's go home. Let's go home. Xianxia smiled helplessly and casually scattered a few small silver balls into the valley. Then the two disappeared together. The two who fled to the periphery of the Blue Sea Deathtrap saw that the terrifying expert did not chase after them. They looked at each other and immediately stopped. Demon Lord Three Knights frowned and said, when did the 3 realms have such a powerful expert? Eunuchly calmed his lingering fear. After thinking for a long time, he said in a low voice, he is indeed very powerful. If this subordinate guessed correctly, for such a powerful expert to appear in this place, he must have been tempered by the Blue Sea essence. Even his eyes and hair have turned blue. This is clearly a sign of borrowing too much Blue Sea essence. I remember that when Lord Demon God lost his mind, his eyes were blue for a period of time, but it was not as deep as this one. I thought so too, but if it really is a sign of using too much Blue Sea essence, it is clearly to the extent that it has penetrated into the bone marrow. I have endured the pain of the Blue Sea essence tempering my body. I cannot imagine that a human's will can withstand the corrosion of such a huge amount of energy without being refined. If that is the case, he would have long become one with the Blue Sea essence. How could he still be alive? Demon Lord Three Knights said in shock. Eunuchly nodded in agreement, then shook his head in denial. Demon Lord, do you still remember his answer when you asked him? You asked him who he was, and he said that this question made him very uncomfortable. I felt that from his tone, it seemed like he did not know who he was, as if he had already gone mad and lost his mind, becoming a real demon. A demon who had gone mad was a completely different concept from those who followed the demonic path. The former was more accurately described as sick, while the latter cultivated demonic arts and did not share the same path as others. Gone mad? Demon Lord Three Knights thought for a moment, then sucked in a breath of cold air. That seems to be the case, but I really cannot imagine that someone could use too much Blue Sea essence and still survive. Just how strong of a will would that require? I'm afraid that even Lord Demon God could not withstand such a huge amount of Blue Sea essence, right? Heavens! Just what kind of faith would allow a person to persevere like this? It's simply inconceivable. Chapter 1197. In my opinion, this is a good thing, Uniquely said thoughtfully. Demon King 3 Knights was puzzled. What do you mean? Since he's lost his mind, as long as we speak carefully and follow his temper, there shouldn't be any big problems. This means that we don't have to run anymore. We can try to get in touch with him. Who knows, there might be unexpected gains. Maybe we can recruit him to serve the Demon King, Uniquely said. Demon King 3 Knights thought for a moment, then waved his hand without hesitation. Let's go back. The two carefully turned back the way they came. In Utopia, when Lan Feng, who had been teleported here, stood in front of Ethereal Palace and looked around in confusion. He had no impression of this place at all. Xianxia asked him to wait, so he stood there and waited. Not long after, a large group of people came out of Ethereal Palace. Everyone who knew when Lan Feng was stunned by his strange appearance. Lu Yanqing, who was walking quickly in front, also stopped and asked Xianxia suspiciously, "Is he really Wen Lanfeng?" Xianxia smiled bitterly, "Yes, it's him. Just like I said, there's something wrong with him here." He raised his hand and pointed to his head. After Wen Lanfeng's gaze swept across the crowd, he directly fixed on Lu Yanqing. He teleported in front of Lu Yanqing. His eyes shone with a snow blue light as he said, "I remember you." He couldn't help but reach out to touch Lu Yanqing's face. Damn it. Selective amnesia. I remember what I don't want to forget, Xianxia muttered. Lu Yanqing subconsciously wanted to raise her hand to block his, but after a pause she let his hand fall on her face and gently caress it. Suddenly, everyone noticed that Wen Lanfeng's eyes were inexplicably glistening with light blue tears. Those who knew about the relationship between the two could only shake their heads slightly, while those who didn't know looked at each other in dismay. Lu Yanqing gently grabbed his hand and took the opportunity to examine his body. After a while, tears also appeared in her eyes. She bit her lip and choked with a trembling voice, "How did you become like this?" She stretched out her hand to wipe away the blue tears on Wen Lanfeng's face. However, as soon as his hand touched the light blue tears, it immediately released a dazzling blue light that wrapped around Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing's entire body trembled on the spot, and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. The expression on her face was extremely painful, as if she was enduring some kind of torture. How could this be? Everyone was shocked, and Wen Lanfeng also seemed a little surprised. Then he seemed to realize something and reached out to touch Lu Yanqing's forehead. All the blue light converged into Wen Lanfeng's fingertips, and Lu Yanqing slowly recovered from the torment. Xianxia suddenly tugged at Xianxia's clothes and whispered, "You found him in the Blue Sea Deadland." Xianxia nodded and said, "Yes, is there a problem?" Xianxia coughed slightly and said, "His tears may contain Blue Sea essence. You can find a way to make him shed more and then collect it." Xianxia looked at Wen Lanfeng with some amazement. He didn't know whether Xianxia's guess was true or not. If it was true and even tears contained Blue Sea essence, then Wen Lanfeng's body contained a lot of Blue Sea essence? How did you become like this? Lu Yanqing couldn't bear it anymore. She hugged Wen Lanfeng's cheeks and burst into tears. "Seeing you, I really feel like I'm back home." Wen Lanfeng raised his hand and stroked Lu Yanqing's hair. He looked at Xianxia and said, "You didn't lie to me." "Of course. Why would I lie to you?" Xianxia nodded and smiled awkwardly. He then waved his hand at everyone and said, "Everyone disperse. Let them talk in private. We won't disturb them." Everyone had no objections and left. Xianxia pulled Xianxia to the edge of the cliff outside the Misty Palace. Hong Tailong saw that the two were sneaking around and didn't want to be left behind. He heard Xianxia ask, "Are you sure his tears contain Blue Sea essence?" "I haven't seen it, but you found him in the Blue Sea Deadland. Looking at the phenomenon just now and the changes in his appearance, I think it's very likely." Xianxia expressed her doubts. "If it's true, then it's troublesome." Xianxia shook his head and sighed. "Isn't that a good thing? What trouble?" Xianxia was puzzled. "What's good about it?" Xianxia snapped, "Why don't you think about it? If the Blue Sea essence can make people like this, do you think I would dare to let Bai Sujin take that risk? If she becomes like Wen Lanfeng, who do you want me to reason with?" This. Xianxia's expression turned solemn. The Myriad Demon Heart Sutra really didn't have any records about the side effects of the Blue Sea essence. Hong Tailong coughed and interrupted, "Seeing this one, whatever, the Blue Sea essence you guys are talking about reminds me of a legend I've heard in the Dragon Clan." "What legend?" The two turned around and asked in unison. Hong Tailong, who had finally turned the topic to him, chuckled and said, "It's said that the Coiling Dragon Patriarch heard it from Tao. It said that there's a very mystical thing in the universe called the Indigo Heart. It contains a tremendous amount of energy and is a mystical treasure that can test the loyalty of love. It's said that if a man and a woman in love can withstand the test of the indigo heart, they will receive the blessings of the indigo heart and receive unimaginable benefits. Wei Chuanxiu was stunned at first, but then he smiled and said nothing. Obviously he didn't believe it. Yu Qianqiu also spat. Ridiculous. Bullsh*t legend. It's a legend. I can't guarantee whether it's true or not. Hong Tailong chuckled and then asked curiously, did this Wen Lanfeng really scare away San Yi and that guy in mourning? Yu Qianqiu didn't answer. Instead he shushed them. The two turned around and saw Lu Yanqing walking towards them with tears still wet. Yu Qianqiu quickly walked over and asked with concern, you're proficient in medicine. How's Wen Lanfeng's condition? Can he still be cured? Yes. Lu Yanqing said with a sad expression. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and praised, as expected of a divine doctor. Even amnesia can be cured. If Wen Lanfeng returns to normal, then it's just around the corner for us to avenge the millions of cultivators in the human world. Hong Tailong and Wei Chuanqiu also nodded excitedly. Say it. What do you need to cure Wen Lanfeng? As long as it's within my means, I'll find a way to get it for you. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his palms together. Lu Yanqing shook her head sadly. Nothing is needed. It's very easy to cure his amnesia. The three looked at each other and asked in unison, what do you mean? Lu Yanqing's lips trembled a few times before she said in a low voice, he hasn't lost his memory. He preserved it with great perseverance, but it's suppressed by the powerful energy in his body. If he wants to recover his memory, he must release all the energy in his body, but that energy has already fused with his cultivation. If he releases that energy, his cultivation will completely dissipate. The three were dumbfounded when they heard this. Everyone wanted a Wen Lanfeng with profound cultivation. How could Wen Lanfeng deal with Demon Monarch 3 Knights and the others if he lost his cultivation? Not to mention that it was simply cruel to the extreme for a cultivator to completely disperse his cultivation that he'd bitterly cultivated for many years. If Wen Lanfeng was awake, he might not agree as well. So, should he heal him or not? In fact, there was something Lu Yanqing didn't say. The reason Wen Lanfeng was able to resist the erosion of such a huge energy with his tenacious will was entirely because he had a strong belief that supported him. It was simple to know what this belief was. It was what he remembered after losing his memory. It was his only spiritual pillar. After Lu Yanqing came into contact with it, she found that Wen Lanfeng had forgotten everything. The only thing he remembered was Lu Yanqing. In other words, the reason why Wen Lanfeng could persevere was because of Lu Yanqing. This cruel to the extreme test almost melted Lu Yanqing's heart. She finally understood how deep Wen Lanfeng loved her. Even at the last moment of mental collapse, she would live strong for her. She would never abandon or give up. She would never change to her. She would never give up. She would never give up. Lu Yanqing had just touched the huge energy, which was Wen Lanfeng's tears. She found it difficult to bear, and the pain Wen Lanfeng had endured could be imagined. Lu Yanqing's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a long time and then slowly said, Lu Yanqing, I believe that if you speak, even if Wen Lanfeng is still in amnesia, he will listen to you and dissipate all his cultivation. But do you think Wen Lanfeng can accept the fact that he has lost his cultivation when he wakes up? I don't know. But I don't want him to be hurt again in my life. Lu Yanqing's shoulders trembled as she cried. She knew that Wen Lanfeng had been seriously injured by Changchun because of her. After 100 years of seclusion, he was seriously injured by Changchun again. The reason why Wen Lanfeng became like this today was to improve his cultivation and restore his dignity in front of her. In short, everything was for her. She was worried that Wen Lanfeng would not be able to accept the loss of his cultivation when he wakes up. I understand your feelings. Yu Qianqiu said, Lu Yanqing, do me a favor. I need Wen Lanfeng's cultivation to help me take revenge. But now the only person who can make him willingly obey is you. I hope you can. Lu Yanqing shook her head and interrupted. She knew what he meant without saying anything else. She cried, I can't take advantage of him when he is unconscious. The three of them looked at each other. If this woman did not agree, looking at Wen Lanfeng's appearance and his cultivation, no one could control him. Chapter 1198. In the high-walled courtyard of Misty Palace, Yu Qianqiu stood in the middle with the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier and Wen Lanfeng on his left and right. Lu Yanqing and the others looked at them. Lu Yanqing finally agreed to Yu Qianqiu. If Yu Qianqiu tried his best to force her, how could she be Yu Qianqiu's opponent? In the end, she had to agree even if she didn't agree. Thus, she persuaded Wanlanfeng to follow Yu Qianqiu. However, she agreed to Yu Qianqiu's condition that she would only do this once and not again. But for Yu Qianqiu, it was enough to bring Wanlanfeng out once. He would kill whoever he could and settle everything before coming back. Lu Yanqing reluctantly stared at Wanlanfeng as she walked over. She wanted to say something, but Yu Qianqiu was afraid that she would continue to be naggy, so he waved his hand and disappeared. The three of them appeared outside Illusory Immortal City. They ran to the ruins of Illusory Immortal City, but they couldn't see a single person. They didn't know where Demon King Three Knights had moved their headquarters to. But it wasn't difficult to find. The three of them casually circled around outside and caught a few demonic path soldiers to verify. Only then did they find out that the demonic path army's headquarters was temporarily at Myriad Saint Mountain. On the misty mountain behind Myriad Saint Mountain, Wanling stood in front of the cliff outside the manor every day, waiting for Bai Qi's return. Unfortunately, there was no news of him. No one knew what she was thinking. She didn't even know that Yu Qianqiu had brought Wanlanfeng and the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier behind her. It was only when the white deer beside her was frightened by the terrifying Fire Soul Mystic Soldier that she suddenly turned around. Yu Qianqiu, how did you get in? Wanling exclaimed. She quickly looked around as if she wanted to call the police. Bai Qi is in my hands. Yu Qianqiu's words immediately made Wanling give up on the idea of calling the police. She shouted in panic, "You're talking nonsense." Yu Qianqiu stared at this infatuated woman with an indifferent expression. He found that Wanling was less cunning and sharpness compared to before. She had more calmness and tranquility of a married woman. Her charm was even better than before. It could be seen that she had someone to rely on and had calmed down. Yu Qianqiu sighed slightly in his heart, but there was no change on his face, nor did he argue with Wanling. He flipped his hand in his sleeve and took out the obsidian underworld light mirror and shook it in front of her. Wanling immediately recognized that it was Bai Qi's item. She turned pale with fright and asked, "What did you do to him?" "What I will do to him depends on the truth of your answer to my question." Yu Qianqiu put away the obsidian underworld light mirror and said indifferently, "If there is a lie, I promise you will never see him again in this life." Wanling completely panicked when she heard this. She completely ignored the strange Wanlanfeng and the Fire Soul Profound Weapon and said helplessly, "What do you want to know?" "As long as I know, I will not hide anything." "That's good." Yu Qianqiu looked at the surrounding mountains and said indifferently, "I want to know where the important figures of the evil Tao are staying in Myriad Saint Mountain. I only know that Demon King Three Knights has occupied Grandfather's Myriad Saint Palace. As for the situation of the others, I have never left this place. I really don't know anything." Wanling was almost begging, "Yu Qianqiu, I beg you to let Bai Qi go, okay? That's really all I know." "I believe what you said." Yu Qianqiu's gaze shot to the highest peak in the distance and said indifferently, "You really want to see Bai Qi?" Wanling was also a smart person. She was just confused because she was concerned. Hearing this, she immediately sensed something was wrong and said with a trembling voice, "What did you do to him?" As soon as she finished speaking, the Fire Soul Profound Weapon beside Yu Qianqiu flashed and the colorful flame blurred her eyes. Looking at Wanling, who was instantly killed by the Fire Soul Profound Weapon and turned into ashes, Yu Qianqiu said with a sad expression, "Bai Qi wants to give you a hope to live, but I feel that it is too cruel to you. It is better to end this ill-fated relationship. Go." With a light shout, the three of them directly broke through the defensive formation and flew towards the Myriad Saints' palace. Just as they neared the Myriad Saints' palace, countless wooden tendrils suddenly shot out from the Myriad Saints' palace, covering the sky as they tried to stop the three of them. The Fire Soul Profound Weapon immediately rushed towards the countless wooden roots, and the wooden roots that touched it instantly turned into ashes. The woman screamed and the countless wooden roots retracted. The Clear Sky Great Demon King, who was temporarily guarding this place, rushed out of Myriad Saint Palace. When she saw the enemies, she immediately exclaimed, "It's you guys again." Without saying a word, she turned around and wanted to run, but with her cultivation, how could she outrun the Fire Soul Profound Weapon? The Fire Soul Profound Weapon chased after her and was about to kill her with a palm strike. Yu Qianqiu, who had killed his way into Myriad Saint Palace under the escort of Wanlanfeng, did not notice the Demon King Three Knights' movements and immediately shouted, "Capture her alive." The Fire Soul Profound Weapon, which was connected to his mind, directly slapped the Clear Sky Great Demon King's back, and a Samadhi true fire poured into her body. Fire was her natural nemesis, let alone the Samadhi true fire. The clear sky great demon king wilted on the spot and was directly captured by the fire soul profound weapon. It grabbed her neck and stood on the roof of the palace. At this moment, the commotion had already alarmed the heroes of the demonic path, and they instantly rushed over from all directions, surrounding myriad Saint Mountain. Many people still remembered the scene of the fire soul profound weapon wreaking havoc in the illusory immortal city. When they saw it, they were all shocked and they were all looking forward to the appearance of the demon king 3 knights and eunuchly. However, they did not see the two of them appear to defend against the enemy, and they immediately wanted to retreat. However, they did not know if the two of them were really not here, so no one dared to act rashly, and no one dared to escape rashly. Xianxia and Wanlanfeng searched around myriad Saint Palace and killed some demonic path soldiers, but they did not see the figures of the demon king 3 knights and eunuchly. Damn it! Are they not back yet? With their cultivation they should have returned long ago. Xianxia looked at the cold and empty myriad Saint Palace and felt suspicious. In the end he was still not at ease, so he knelt on one knee and pressed his palm on the ground. He used both the earth and metal arts and very soon he found a dungeon and it seemed that there was someone locked up. Xianxia was a little curious. He did not know who was locked up, but he definitely had to save the enemy of his enemy. The two of them immediately rushed into the courtyard of the harem and blasted open the fake mountain in the middle of the courtyard. The entrance to the dungeon appeared in front of the two of them and they flashed in. In the pitch-black dungeon, there was an iron cell as thick as a child's arm, and on the cold iron floor, a woman was lying, looking abnormally lonely and miserable. Xianxia looked carefully, and his brows immediately furrowed. This woman was none other than the Mu Tianjiao that he knew. He did not expect that woman who was not inferior to men to actually fall to such a state. She did not even react when he blasted open the dungeon, and it was obvious that she had been restrained. He took out a divine sword and with a ka, he directly split open the door of the iron cell. He walked over and knelt on one knee, gently supporting the motionless Mu Tianjiao against his body. Mu Tianjiao's blank and helpless eyes fell on his face, and her unfocused gaze gradually focused. When she saw that it was Xianxia, although she could not move, her eyes began to fill with large teardrops. She did not think that she could live, and she did not think that someone would come to save her, because she knew that Wu Xiong and his son would not give up for her. In fact, her heart was already dead and life and death were no longer important to her. However, not even in her dreams did she think that at this kind of time, in this kind of place, someone would actually come to save her, and it was Xianxia. Xianxia quickly removed the restriction on her body, and seeing that she was biting her lips to prevent herself from crying, he could not help but sigh, "Mu Tianjiao, why are you here? Could it be that Wu Xiong did not escape with you to the Netherworld God Palace?" Hearing that voice that she had not heard for a long time, Mu Tianjiao finally could not help but cry bitterly. She swung her fists and fiercely punched him, then suddenly hugged his neck and buried her head in his shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably, "Why is it you? Why is it you who came to save me? Why did you reject me back then?" Xianxia smiled bitterly and really did not know what to say. He then gently patted her back and said, "I am about to fight to the death with Demon King 3 knights and the others. It is very dangerous for you to stay here, so I will first send you to a safe place." Unexpectedly, Mu Tianjiao hugged his neck even tighter and rubbed his shoulder with all her strength, shaking her head and choking, "Don't abandon me, hold me, I want to see the outside world in your arms, I won't affect you, just this once, okay?" Xianxia's expression twitched, but in the end, he still gritted his teeth and hugged her by the waist. He quickly drilled out of the iron cage and quickly left the dungeon with Wanlanfeng. Seeing that the fire soul profound soldiers holding the demon king Qing Tian on the roof did not move, the two also flashed to the roof. Xianxia looked around and his gaze directly locked onto Jin Tai in the crowd. He immediately laughed coldly and said, "Jin Tai, we meet again, you really made me look for you. Today it's time for our new and old grudges to be settled." In the air, Jin Tai looked at his colleagues on both sides and did not want to lose his prestige. He immediately shouted angrily, "Xianxia, how dare you make an enemy of the Demon King? Your death is not far away and you still dare to talk big." But Xianxia suddenly shouted and quickly observed the expressions of the crowd, because he still did not know who the great Demon King Hudu was. In the crowd, the great Demon King Hudu did not understand, and pointed at Xianxia and scolded, "Cowardly bandit, taking advantage of the Demon King's absence to cause trouble. Wait until the Demon King returns, let's see how arrogant you can be." Haha. Xianxia looked up to the sky and laughed wildly, "I have fought with Sanyi several times and I am still alive and well. What can he do to me? This time I am looking for him." These words immediately caused the surrounding people to scold, but no one dared to make a move. Mu Qinjiao, who was in his arms, hugged his neck, and personally witnessed the scene of him laughing arrogantly at the heroes of the demonic path. A gratified smile appeared on her face and she said in a low voice, "Being in your arms is indeed the safest, I have always thought so. Xianxia, promise me after I die, please bury me beside my mother." Hearing her voice gradually weaken, Xianxia was slightly stunned. He looked down and saw blood flowing out of Mu Tianjiao's lips. He was shocked and quickly checked, and immediately found that Mu Tianjiao had cut off all her meridians. He immediately cried out in alarm, "Mu Tianjiao, what are you doing?" Chapter 1199. I know, you killed my father, but I can't hate you. I'm a married woman, but now I'm hugging my father's murderer in front of everyone. I have no face to live, you shouldn't have refused. I want you to never forget me, to take revenge on you. Mu Tianjiao's intermittent and weak voice stopped, and her arms around his neck softened. Her eyes closed, but there was still a satisfied smile on her face. Her red lips were dyed bright and dazzling with fresh blood. Why are you so stupid? Don't we want to live well by fighting and killing? As long as people are alive, everything can be solved. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. Then he hugged Mu Tianjiao's body tightly in his arms and pressed his lips on Mu Tianjiao's blood-stained lips. This scene caused the demonic cultivators in the air to look at each other in dismay, not knowing what was going on. The domineering Great Demon King, who had personally captured Mu Tianjiao, crossed his arms and sneered. This Wu Xiong's wife is a bit interesting. I wonder what Wu Xiong will think if he finds out about this. His wife actually made him a cuckold in public. Xianxia, the Wu father and son have suffered such a great humiliation. I don't think they will let you off. Amidst the laughter, Xianxia's lips released the kiss of life and death. Looking at Mu Tianjiao's lost face, he smiled faintly and said, "It turns out that not being fickle and being a sanctimonious person is also a mistake. In fact, how can I not like beauties? In fact, you've always been in my heart. If I had known earlier, I would have slept with you. I only know today that I've always been a coward." As soon as he said this, the surrounding laughter suddenly became louder, but it seemed that they were laughing with a guilty conscience. Fire Soul Mysterious Soldier and Wen Lanfeng did not know what everyone was laughing about, nor did they know what Yu Qianqiu meant. After Mu Tianjiao's corpse was hugged tightly again, it disappeared into Yu Qianqiu's arms in front of everyone's eyes and was sent to Utopia. The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face suddenly disappeared. He waved his hand and pointed at Jintai and Hudu, "Catch them alive and kill the others. Kill, kill." Wen Lanfeng's long blue hair fluttered in the wind, and his whole body shone with a snow-blue radiance. In an instant he shot into the crowd, and the snow-blue sword shadows danced around him. He was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, and no one could block his attack. Rumble. His target was obviously Hutu and Jintai. No one had expected that such a god of killing would suddenly appear. Immediately they didn't care about anything else. It was more important to run for their lives. Hutu and Jintai fled in panic. However, how could they escape from Wen Lanfeng? Wen Lanfeng grabbed Hutu with one hand and caught up with Jintai in the blink of an eye. He killed a lot of people with one in each hand, and then flashed back as if nothing had happened. Jintai and Hutu, whose cultivations were sealed, stared at Yu Qianqiu with ashen faces. Yu Qianqiu didn't even glance at them. Instead, he glanced around at the crowd of Devil League warriors who had just dispersed. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, he suddenly turned around and slapped Jintai's face over 100 times, scolding, "Let me sing a song. Let me dance." After slapping for a while, he eased the grief and indignation that had accumulated because of Mu Tianjiao's death. Jintai did not know that he was looking for an excuse to vent his anger. After being slapped, he still defended with fear, "Yu Qianqiu, this is all a misunderstanding. I was instigated by that bitch Ji Wu." Misunderstanding my ass. Is it also a misunderstanding to want to kill me in front of me? Yu Qianqiu opened his palm and slapped Wen Lanfeng again. Hutu, who was also being held by Wen Lanfeng, was terrified. He didn't know if he would end up like Wen Lanfeng. After being slapped again, Jintai said with a terrified face, "Yu Qianqiu, as long as you spare my life, I'm willing to serve you. If you don't believe me, I can give you my natal primordial spirit." It could be said that he was unscrupulous in order to survive. Hutu Great Demon King and Azure Sky Great Demon King had terrible expressions. Their natal primordial spirits were in the hands of Demon King 3 Knights, so they couldn't offer their loyalty even if they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu did not buy it. He glanced at the three and asked, "Where is he?" "I don't know." Jintai and Hutu answered hurriedly, but they all looked at Qing Tian. Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows. He pulled the two of them from Wenlanfeng's hands and sent them back to Utopia to be watched by Hong Tailong. Hong Tailong of Utopia's Misty Palace walked around the courtyard with his hands behind his back. He had just taken over Mu Tianjiao's corpse and was cursing his bad luck. He did not expect Yu Qianzhou to send him Jintai and Hutu in the blink of an eye. When he saw Jintai, Hong Tailong's eyes lit up. He laughed wildly and said, "Yu Qianzhou, you're too awesome." His voice immediately attracted a lot of people to watch. It was unknown where Jin Taijing was. The moment he saw Hong Tailong, he immediately panicked and ran. However, with his cultivation sealed, how could he possibly escape? Hong Tailong chased after him and gave him a series of punches and kicks. As he did so, he cursed, "Bastard! You deserve this." Hutu stood motionless. He knew he could not run, so he just stood there and accepted his fate. Heir Shuejuan and Ji Wu, who came out of the palace, did not expect Jintai to be caught. Heir Shuejuan shouted, "Jintai, you bastard!" He immediately rushed over and joined in the beating. The two big guys started punching and kicking. Jintai desperately crawled to Ji Wu's feet and shouted, "Madam, save me!" Ji Wu, who was originally indifferent, suddenly became angry out of humiliation. She shouted, "Who is your madam?" She kicked his head several times. Buddha felt a chill. She did not know how many people Jintai had offended in the celestial realm. After venting his anger, Hong Tailong saw that Jintai would die if he continued to beat him. He quickly stopped the two of them and said, "Stop, stop. You can't kill him. He's still useful to you, Qianzhou." Jintai, who was beaten black and blue, quickly got up and hid behind Hong Tailong. He could not see the majesty of the celestial emperor anymore. On the roof of Wansheng Palace, Yu Qianzhou grabbed Demon King Qing Tian's hair and pulled him from the hands of the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier. He said indifferently, "Where is Sanyi?" "I really don't know. Demon King Sanyi and Eunuch Li carried the fainted Yan Zhuixing away and have not returned. He asked me to temporarily stay in Wansheng Palace, but he really did not tell me where to go." The great Demon King of Qing Tian complained as he pulled open his clothes. His green clothes slid down, exposing his beautiful body to the air. He grabbed Yu Qianzhou's hand and said seductively, "I've served the demon gods and the previous demon monarchs, and I've never disappointed them. As long as you let me live, I'm willing to serve you for the rest of my life. I'll definitely be ****. Yu Qianzhou punched her in the eye. He was not in the mood to play with her now. Demon King Qing Tian screamed and was thrown back to Utopia. The people from Misty Palace suddenly saw a naked woman and looked at each other. They did not know what Yu Qianzhou was doing outside. Yu Qianzhou, who wanted to search for Sanyi, suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no! Are they still looking for Blue Sea Essence in the Blue Sea Death Trap?" He did not want another Wenlanfeng or a second demon god to pop out of the demonic path. Just as he was about to rush back to Blue Sea Death Trap, he suddenly saw 3 streams of light leading a group of streams of light rushing over. When he focused his eyes, Demon King Sanyi, Eunuch Li, and Yan Zhuixing were already standing in the sky. The scattered demonic path heroes had also returned. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing's eyes were shining with alternating red and blue light, as if he was fighting something in his heart. He looked at Yu Qianzhou as if he did not see it. "Good. Very good. They're all here. This saves me the trouble of looking for them one by one." Yu Qianzhou looked at Yan Zhuixing and chuckled. When Yan Zhuixing heard his voice, his body trembled slightly, and the alternating red and blue light in his eyes flickered even faster. Demon King Sanyi completely ignored Yu Qianzhou and cupped his hands at Wenlanfeng, whose blue hair was fluttering in the wind. "You are a wise man. Do not listen to the slanderous words of a lowly man and be used by him. I, Demon King Sanyi, am willing to become allies with you. After my demonic path unifies the 3 realms, I am willing to share the world with you. What do you think?" Wenlanfeng's snow-blue eyes were calm. This was the first time the demonic path heroes heard Demon King Sanyi admit defeat like this. For a moment they could not help but feel surprised. Could it be that Demon King Sanyi and Eunuch Li were not this person's match? They only guessed one thing, but they did not know that the reason why Demon King Sanyi was so polite to Wenlanfeng was because he knew that Wenlanfeng had lost his mind and wanted to win him over to his side. Otherwise, he would not have dared to bring everyone back here, knowing that a terrifying expert from the Blue Ocean Death Trap was here. Yu Qianzhou roughly guessed it and laughed. "Sanyi, I'm afraid your plan is going to fail." He pointed at the 3 of them and said angrily, "Wenlanfeng, kill the 3 of them." At this moment, Yan Zhuixing, who heard Yu Qianqiu's voice again, suddenly raised his arms and shouted at the sky. Yu Qianqiu, I'm going to kill you. His voice reverberated in the sky. Almost at the same time, the red light in his red and blue eyes completely overshadowed the blue light. He stared at Yu Qianqiu like a sharp blade. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing had successfully found the blue ocean essence to cleanse his meridians. His cultivation had directly crossed the Demon General level to the Demon King level, soaring to the late-stage Great Demon King level. He was only one step away from the God level. He did not expect to see Yu Qianqiu in front of him the moment he woke up. The humiliation of his mother and sister's death immediately surged in his mind. He desperately pounced at Yu Qianqiu, wishing he could tear Yu Qianqiu alive. When Lan Feng, who was emitting snow blue light, had just rushed out, and the two immediately met. Demon King San Yi and Eunuch Li exclaimed in unison, Yan Zhuixing is back. They knew how powerful Wen Lanfeng was, and they also knew that Yan Zhuixing was not Wen Lanfeng's match at all. Chapter 1200. They thought they could persuade Wen Lanfeng, but they didn't know the story behind Wen Lanfeng. They didn't know Lu Yanqing's great influence on Wen Lanfeng, and they didn't expect this to happen. Otherwise they wouldn't have been sent here. Seeing Wen Lanfeng charging at him, a black full moon suddenly appeared in front of Yan Zhuixing. As his cultivation rose, so did the power of the devil blade. The black and red baleful aura intertwined like endless ghosts, and the devil blade's edge was like a soul-stirring cold thunderbolt streaking across the sky. Even the onlookers were shocked. A snow-blue sword light shot out to meet the black full moon above his head. Boom! The blue light exploded and dispersed, and the devil blade was sent flying into the sky, turning into a small black dot. When Lanfeng's eyes flashed with blue light. He didn't expect a late-stage immortal emperor to be able to block his attack. He waved his hand and another sword light shot out. The small black dot in the distance suddenly grew bigger, and the full moon returned with the momentum of thunder, blocking the blow again in an instant, using the curved tip of the wheel to defuse the blow. With the huge impact force, it turned into a ferocious and rapid spinning wheel. Instead, it slashed at Wen Lanfeng in the air, bringing with it a strong gust of wind that exploded. Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. He didn't expect Yan Zhuixing to become so powerful. Demon King Three Knights and Eunuch Li were both surprised and happy. They were happy that Lord Demon God's Devil Blade was indeed extraordinary, but they were shocked that Yan Zhuixing would be in danger if he continued fighting. Sky Devil Fist. Demon King Three Knights raised a monstrous demonic aura and waved his arm. A huge fist shadow the size of a mountain blasted at Wen Lanfeng. Demon Restriction Wheel. Eunuch Li slapped his palm, and a dozen shining white halos shot at Wen Lanfeng. In order to save Yan Zhuixing, the three of them attacked together with Yan Zhuixing's devil blade. Wen Lanfeng sensed danger. His eyes emitted a blue light. He swung his long snow-blue hair, and a jagged, dazzling snow-blue light burst out from his body. He was like a blue sun that shone brightly. Boom, boom, boom. With three loud explosions, the powerful shockwaves instantly destroyed all the peaks and valleys of the Myriad Saints Mountain. Countless disciples of the Myriad Saints Palace were annihilated amidst their screams, and the demonic cultivators scattered in all directions. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu had the protection of the Fire Soul Profound weapon beside him. Otherwise he would have to flee for his life as well. However, the Myriad Saints Palace beneath his feet had already been reduced to ashes in an instant. The Sky Devil Fist and the Forbidden Demon Wheel were smashed in an instant, and the Devil Blade was shaken away at the same time. When Lanfeng's white robe fluttered in the strong astral wind, and his snow-blue long hair fluttered in all directions. The blue light in his eyes shone brightly, and the blue cloud pattern between his eyebrows shone brightly, like a sword demon descending from heaven. As his body spun in the air, he waved his arms and shot out a dozen snow-blue sword shadows from his fingertips. Not good. The three of them exclaimed at the same time. However, a few sword shadows directly broke through Eunuch Li's defense and pierced through his chest at an unbelievable speed. Before he could use teleportation to dodge, a few pillars of blood spurted out from his chest. Eunuch Li clutched his chest in disbelief as blood began to flow from the corner of his mouth. Demonic succubus doppelganger. Demon King Three Knights raised his eyebrows and clapped his palms. His body immediately turned into dozens of phantom shadows and exploded. A few shocking sword shadows that were shooting over at high speed missed. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing had also awakened from his rage. He also used the demonic succubus doppelganger technique, but he couldn't keep up with Demon King Three Knights' speed. Just as the phantom shadows separated, he was pierced back to his original form by a few sword shadows. Fortunately, the devil blade returned in time to protect him, blocking the other few sword shadows for him. Boom! The devil blade let out a mournful cry, and Yan Zhuixing, who was behind the devil blade, fell to the ground with blood spurting out of his eye sockets. The devil blade that was shaken away shot back again and hooked onto Yan Zhuixing's clothes, trying to escape with him. Meanwhile, Eunuch Li clutched his chest and forced himself to flee. However, the two of them were too slow. When Lanfeng's fluttering blue long hair made a hissing sound in the air. In the blink of an eye, she caught up to Eunuch Li. She raised her arm, and a snow blue light burst out from her palm, condensing into a huge sword shadow made of pure energy. She held it in her hand and swung it, cutting Eunuch Li into two. Blood splattered from the sky. Oh! In the distance, Demon King Three Knights let out a heaven-shaking mournful cry. When Lanfeng chased after Yan Zhuixing again, she slapped the side of the devil blade with her palm, sending it flying. Her other hand drew out a cold light and cut Yan Zhuixing into two. After killing two in an instant, she turned into a stream of light with a swish of her blue hair and chased after Demon King Three Knights with her sword. Demon King Three Knights knew that he wasn't a match for this person, so he used the devil light glimpse to escape. The evil Dao heroes who were watching the battle from afar were also scared out of their wits as they fled for their lives. Great! Yu Qianzhou applauded excitedly. He didn't expect Wen Lanfeng to be so powerful. After the light disappeared, Wen Lanfeng's figure fell heavily from the sky and fell to the ground, unconscious and motionless. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He didn't expect that a person that was turned into ashes could be reformed. He immediately turned into a stream of light and rushed over, holding Wen Lanfeng to check. Wen Lanfeng's face and body were covered with blue blood. He was in a deep coma, but his bodily functions were still intact. He was not dead yet. Yu Qianzhou was pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect that Wen Lanfeng could survive the devil god's attack. The blue sea essence was indeed magical. At this moment, streams of light rushed over from all directions. Yu Qianzhou's expression froze. He knew that Demon King Three Knights and the others had returned. Now that he had lost the Fire Soul mystic weapon and when Lanfeng was seriously injured and unconscious, he couldn't stay here any longer. He immediately disappeared with Wen Lanfeng in his arms. Demon King Three Knights, who had rushed back, floated in the center of the huge crater. He looked around in shock. He saw the demonic claw that tore through the void. It was the demonic claw of the demonic god technique. He could recognize it at a glance. The demonic cultivators who rushed over also looked at the endless pit in shock. The domineering Great Demon King floated behind Demon King Three Knights and said with lingering fear, "It seems that Lord Devil God personally tore through the void and attacked. It was Lord Devil God who saved me." The excited Demon Lord Three Knights nodded heavily. He raised his head to look at where the demon god had torn open the void, then suddenly knelt down on one knee in the void with great sincerity, prostrating himself in front of the demon god. The demonic cultivators also knelt down and bowed in the same direction, Utopia's misty palace. As soon as Yu Qianzhou walked into the palace with the unconscious Wen Lanfeng in his arms, everyone exclaimed and surrounded him. Lu Yanqing even opened her arms and snatched Wen Lanfeng from Yu Qianzhou's hands. Kneeling on the ground, she stroked Wen Lanfeng's messy blue hair with trembling hands and cried, "What happened to him? How did he get hurt like this? Didn't you say he would be fine with his cultivation?" Hong Tailong also gasped, pointing at the unconscious Wen Lanfeng and asking Yu Qianzhou, "What's going on? With his cultivation, who else could injure him to this extent? Even in the god world he can be considered an expert." The muscles on Yu Qianzhou's face twitched fiercely and he said gloomily, "Who else but that shameless devil god?" The devil god tore through the void and attacked again. "Devil god!" The crowd exclaimed in unison. To them this was such an unreachable figure. The third time. It's the third time. Yu Qianzhou clenched his teeth and gestured to the crowd. "This is the third time that guy has attacked me so brazenly. They say it's not the third time. That bastard devil god has gone too far. What's more, since he was dead, why bother with resurrecting after countless years? He might as well turn over a new leaf and start a new life, forgetting all the happiness and unhappiness of his previous life. Even if I can really be reborn, even if I die, I don't want to hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin and spend countless years in a daze. It's better to end everything once and for all." "You don't want to be reborn?" Hong Tailong was taken aback. He then chuckled strangely and said, Is it because you robbed someone else's tomb in the mausoleum of the god of sin and are afraid of retribution if you hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin? So, this is called gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. You can think whatever you want. Xianxia let out a breath and said, "Where is she? I'm going to fulfill her last wish." Hong Tailong led him to the room where Mu Qianjiao's body was kept. Xianxia stared at her quietly for a while before extending his palm. A water dragon emerged from his palm and gently washed away the dirt and bloodstains on Mu Qianjiao's face. He then carried her and disappeared from the room with Hong Tailong. The two of them appeared in a valley not far from the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. They could see traces of a fight, but the two of them did not pay too much attention to it. They flashed into the air and looked at the town that was almost in ruins. The entire town was like a dead land with not a single living person in sight. When the two of them arrived at the dilapidated Four Links Chamber of Commerce, they discovered a troublesome matter. Where was the grave of Mu Qianjiao's mother? Fortunately, the two of them found Nan Tianlong, who was struggling at death's door and had lost an arm. If they didn't rescue him in time, he would probably be dead. Hong Tailong quickly performed the rescue, and it took a while for Nan Tianlong to recover. However, Hong Tailong secretly transmitted his voice. "His injuries are too severe. I'm helping to keep him alive, but he won't be able to hold on for long. Ask whatever you want to ask." Nan Tianlong, on the other hand, stared blankly at Mu Qianjiao, who was in Xianxia's embrace, and two streams of tears flowed down his cheeks. When the demonic path appeared, too many people died. Xianxia was already numb to it. He could only sigh and say, "Nan Tianlong." Mu Qianjiao's last wish was to be buried together with her mother. "Where is her mother's grave?" Nan Tianlong whimpered and said vaguely, 50 miles to the north in the flower field." Xianxia carried Mu Qianjiao and turned to leave. As a result, Hong Tailong's hand on Nan Tianlong's back loosened, and Nan Tianlong could no longer breathe. He fell to the ground with a thud. Without turning his head, Xianxia sighed and said, "Bring him along." The two of them carried Nan Tianlong and Nan Tianlong to a place 50 miles to the north. In the flower field there were two tombs side by side. When Xianxia landed and saw Mu Bing's name on the tombstone on the left, he knew they had arrived. Xianxia used the earth art to build a grave beside the tombstone on the right. He then used the metal art to cast a golden coffin and placed Mu Qianjiao inside. After covering the coffin, he buried Nan Tianlong beside Mu Bing before helping the two of them erect tombstones. Before leaving, Xianxia found a pine tree sapling from a nearby mountain and planted it beside Mu Qianjiao's grave. He used the wood art to make the pine tree grow rapidly into a huge tree to shelter Mu Qianjiao from the wind and rain. After doing all this, he held onto Mu Qianjiao's tombstone and stood there for a long time. Then he left with Hong Tailong. He did not say a single word from the beginning to the end. In Utopia's military camp, Xianxia stood on the platform and looked down at Jin Tailong, Hutu, and Qing Tian. It was unknown who had been kind enough to throw a woman's clothes for Qing Tian to wear. "I have some questions to ask you. You'd better answer me honestly and you might have a chance to live." Xianxia did not waste any time. He looked at the three trembling people and asked, "Did Wenrui leak the secret to 3 knights when he attacked the realm of the divine ruin?" "Yes." Jin Tailong and Qing Tian answered immediately. Qing Tian added, "Yan Zhuixing is Wenrui's master." Hutu's face stiffened. He really did not know about this. Demon Eye Ecstasy. It seems like Wenrui has always been controlled by Yan Zhuixing. Xianxia nodded. His hands were clenched into fists behind his back. Right now he only hated himself. He regretted not listening to Zhang Peng's words in a moment of soft-heartedness, causing the entire army to be annihilated. His sin was unforgivable. It's not time for the realm of the divine ruin to open yet. How did 3 knights get in? Xianxia said in a gloomy tone. Hutu's face became miserable again. He still did not know about this. Jin Tailong lowered his head guiltily. In the end, Qing Tian Great Devil King sold him out on the spot. She pointed at him and said loudly, "Demon King 3 knights did not know the method to enter the realm of the divine ruin. It was Jin Tailong who suggested that Demon King 3 knights go to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. Jin Tailong even personally accompanied 3 knights to the ancient forest. Only then did 3 knights have the method to open the realm of the divine ruin?" Jin Tailong looked at Qing Tian with resentment and immediately knelt down in front of Xianxia. He hurriedly explained, "I had no choice." Xianxia expressionlessly looked at him and said word by word, "In other words, the method to enter the realm of the divine ruin was leaked by Mu Yuanzi. Since you went to the ancient forest with 3 knights, Then tell me everything in detail. You cannot hide anything. Otherwise you will die a horrible death. If you don't believe me, you can try. Jin Tailong was eager to push all responsibility away. He immediately told the story of how he and Demon King 3 knights went to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. At the same time, he emphasized that it was 3 knights who forced him to go with them. He did not say a single word when he got there, and Mu Yuanzi's attitude towards him was very bad. It seemed like he wanted to tell Yu Qianzhou that he, 3 knights, and Mu Yuanzi had always been at odds with each other. However, he had no way of proving that he and Yu Qianzhou were on the same side. After learning what had happened, Yu Qianzhou was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. That old guy could clearly hide in the Woodkiller Sea without any worries. As long as he didn't come out, Demon King 3 knights couldn't do anything to him. However, he didn't have any self-respect, and thought that it had nothing to do with him even if everyone outside died. Yu Qianzhou immediately shouted angrily towards the distance. Mu Yuanzi, do you really think that you are the local tyrant of the 3 realms and no one dares to touch you? Others can't enter the Woodkiller Sea, but I can come and go as I please. Just you wait. His voice reverberated, filled with resentment. It's not worth getting angry with someone like that. We can slowly deal with them. Hong Tailong coughed, reminding him how to deal with the 3. Yu Qianzhou suddenly stared at the 3 and sneered, Jin Tailong, stay. The others will be temporarily locked up. Hearing that, Jin Tailong immediately begged for his life, kneeling and kowtowing. In order to survive, he would do anything. Usually, such people were the most dangerous. Zhang Peng quickly brought his men and escorted Ho Tu and Qing Tian away. Before they left, the 2 of them rejoiced and looked at the crying Jin Tailong with a pitiful gaze. When the other 2 couldn't see what was happening here, Yu Qianzhou gave Hong Tailong a meaningful glance. Hong Tailong flashed behind Jin Tai and slammed his palm onto Jin Tai's head. Jin Tai's head instantly exploded, causing golden dust to fill the sky and drift in all directions with the wind. It was as if the entire utopia had turned into a world of golden dust. Even the people from Misty Palace flashed outside, looking at the beautiful golden world far away. It was even more dazzling than fireworks. An hour later, all the flying golden powder had fallen down, and the surrounding area of tens of miles had become a dazzling golden field under the sunlight. Hong Tailong held a wriggling white ball of light in his palm. He immediately laughed and said, Jin Tailong, stop resisting pointlessly. Once this old dragon erases the memories of your primordial spirit, all the grudges between us will be written off. His 2 palms quickly hugged the white ball of light, and when the white ball of light completely stopped wriggling, he tossed it onto the general selection stage. Holding the white ball of light, Yu Qianzhou opened his mouth and sucked it into his stomach like a whale drawing water. Then he quickly sat cross-legged on the general selection stage and closed his eyes. Chapter 1202. Boiling. At this moment, Yu Qianzhou's body could only be described as boiling. After the white ball of light was guided into his dantian, a bit of its essence transformed into Jin Tai's appearance. He swallowed the metal attribute white crystal bead into his stomach, then sat cross-legged on the spot that belonged to the white crystal bead. Immediately, it completely fused with Yu Qianzhou's body, becoming a part of Yu Qianzhou's body. The boundless cultivation base that he brought with him naturally became Yu Qianzhou's cultivation base. At the same time, Yu Qianzhou's fleshly body seemed to be very unused to such a powerful cultivation base. To be exact, he was not used to how to control such a powerful cultivation base. The boundless cultivation base within his dantian surged like raging waves. Yu Qianzhou quickly guided it out and circulated it within his meridians. In an instant, the unparalleled cultivation base was like a river bursting through a dam, gushing out violently. It rapidly rushed into his meridians throughout his limbs and bones, jolting the blood and qi in his entire body into chaos. The pain it brought was unimaginable to outsiders. Yu Qianzhou's entire body turned red, and traces of blood could be seen faintly seeping out from his 7 orifices. Hong Tailong, who was observing him from below the stage, actually heard the raging roars of a raging river coming from his body. In order to lessen the pain, Hong Tailong flashed up and sat cross-legged behind Yu Qianzhou. He placed both his palms on Yu Qianzhou's back, using his powerful cultivation base to help guide the berserk energy within Yu Qianzhou's body. The 2 of them sat on the stage for 3 days and 3 nights. When Hong Tailong retracted his palms, Yu Qianzhou slowly opened his eyes. Under the impact of his powerful cultivation base, the shackles in his fleshly body that had yet to reach his cultivation base were all broken through. Finally, the raging cultivation base in his body was tamed into a slowly flowing river, becoming one with his body and mind, completely submitting to his control. Ah, looks like the difference in cultivation base is too great. Devouring isn't that easy. Not bad, not bad. His cultivation base broke through to the mid-stage minor god stage in one fell swoop. Kinti's death was worthwhile. His cultivation base was not wasted. Hong Tailong stood up and laughed. Yu Qianzhou also stood up in surprise. He opened his arms and felt the brand new world that he could control in his body. It was a level that he could not even dream of before. It turned out that it was so powerful. He opened his arms to embrace the heavens and earth and softly shouted, "Come back!" All of the golden powder that had been scattered within a radius of several tens of miles immediately rushed back to the military camp. In the blink of an eye, all of the golden powder had condensed into Kim Tai's original appearance. However, his eyes were closed peacefully, making him look like a lifelike statue. Below the stage there was a finger-thick golden stick. Yu Qianzhou stretched out his 5 claws, and it immediately flashed into his hand. Following his will, it quickly turned into a golden stick with a balanced length and thickness. It was Kintai's golden cloud stick. This thing already has spirituality. As long as it is nurtured in a certain environment, it will probably become a second gold spirit in many years. Yu Qianzhou held the golden cloud stick in his hand and examined it. He immediately understood its attributes. Then he casually tossed it and it stabbed into the ground beside Kinti's statue. Kinti's statue actually reached out a hand and grabbed it. It stood there motionlessly, like a guardian god in golden armor in a utopia military camp. Yu Qianzhou then carefully examined the changes in his cultivation base. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Kinti's cultivation base has already reached the mid-stage minor god stage. After my ascendant immortal cultivation base fused with it, it actually did not grow at all. Looks like my original cultivation base is really not worth mentioning compared to Kinti's. That's natural. The higher the cultivation base, the greater the gap between each level. Similarly, it's harder to improve. It's not as simple as 1 plus 1. Hong Tailong laughed and made an analogy. This is also the reason why an expert can deal with many experts with slightly lower cultivation base. Zhang Peng, who was silently listening to their conversation behind the stage, finally understood what had happened to his master. Immediately, he flashed to the front of the stage and congratulated, "Congratulations, master." Yu Qianzhou nodded with a beaming smile and said, "Now we can bring Hutu here. I'll help them get out of this abyss of suffering." Hong Tailong clicked his tongue on one side and shook his head. Then he flashed away from the stage to make preparations. Yes. Zhang Peng quickly accepted the order and left. Not long after, he brought Hutu, who had a nervous expression on her face, over. Hong Tailong did not say a word of nonsense. Taking advantage of the fact that Hutu's cultivation base was sealed and could not fight back, he went behind Hutu and slapped her head cleanly. Boom. A sound like the collapse of a mountain was heard. Yellow dust was set off and spread out in all directions. Hong Tailong dispersed the surrounding yellow dust and held a yellow light ball that was wriggling rapidly in his hand. He directly erased the memory of Hutu's primordial spirit. When the yellow light ball stopped wriggling completely, he threw it to Yu Qianzhou. As soon as Yu Qianzhou caught it, he immediately swallowed it into his stomach without hesitation. He quickly closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. As soon as the yellow light ball entered his dantian, a bit of its essence turned into Hutu's appearance. His eyes lit up when he saw the yellow crystal bead. He could not wait to grab it and swallow it. His body immediately flashed with light and he sat cross-legged on the spot where the yellow crystal bead used to be. This time, because Yu Qianzhou already had the cultivation base of the small god middle stage, it was not difficult for him to control Hutu's cultivation base. Coupled with his previous experience, it could be said that he was very familiar with the process. Hong Tailong, who was standing below the stage, saw that he did not need any more help and was happy to be at ease. Inside the misty palace, when Lan Feng, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. Blue light shot out from his eyes. Under the powerful energy of the blue sea essence, when Lanfeng's injuries were almost healed in a few days, there was no doubt that the blue sea essence was magical. When Lanfeng's body was filled with a large amount of blue sea essence, he did not use the blue sea essence to cleanse his muscles and marrow like others did. Instead, he fused a large amount of blue sea essence with his body without knowing why. It could be said that when Lan Feng now had an immortal body, as long as his consciousness did not collapse, he could be reborn again even if his bones were turned into ashes. This was also the reason why he could resurrect after being killed by the demonic god. Seeing that he had woken up, Lu Yanqing, who had been waiting by his side, immediately hugged him and examined him. After finding that he was fine, she kept muttering to herself, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I should not have agreed to let you go out and take risks. Otherwise you would not have been injured." When Lanfeng's blue eyes looked at her quietly, he reached out and stroked her hair, saying, "I believe you. You're not wrong." Although the words spoken were words of love, the tone was still cold, and there was a faint trace of the charm of metal rubbing against each other. "I can't let you go on like this." Lu Yanqing suddenly got up and looked at him with tears in her eyes. She bit her lip and hesitated for a long time. Then, with a trembling voice, she grabbed his hand and asked, "If I let you disperse the huge energy in your body, would you be willing?" When Lan Feng sat up straight and looked at her quietly with his blue eyes, he nodded and said, "Whatever you say, I'll do it. But at the same time, it will also disperse your cultivation. You've gone through untold hardships to get to where you are today. Are you really willing?" Lu Yanqing's voice trembled. Her hand holding his hand was also trembling. "I believe you." When Lanfeng's tone and expression did not have a trace of hesitation, large tears fell from Lu Yanqing's eyes. She buried her head and choked for a long time, saying repeatedly, "It's all my fault. Don't cry. I don't know why, but seeing you cry makes my heart ache." When Lan Feng held her face with both hands, "No. Even if you blame me for the rest of your life, I can't let you continue like this." Lu Yanqing suddenly grabbed his hands and pulled him with great difficulty. Come with me." The two of them walked out of Misty Palace hand in hand. When someone asked Wen Lanfeng how he was, Lu Yanqing only said that he was fine and wanted to take Wen Lanfeng around. As soon as the two of them left Misty Palace, they flew into the distance. In Utopia's military camp, after Yu Qianzhou fused the two cultivations into his body, Yu Qianzhou checked the situation in his dantian. At that moment, the fire spirit, metal spirit, and earth spirit had returned. He was still missing the wood spirit and water spirit. He did not know how the five spirits would react when they returned. When he slowly opened his eyes and stood up, Hong Tailong, who was wandering in the military camp square, immediately flashed over. When he realized that he could no longer see through Yu Qianzhou's cultivation, he immediately asked impatiently, "How is it?" The difference between each level is indeed huge. After fusing with the earth spirit middle stage cultivation, my current cultivation has only just entered the small god late stage. Although Yu Qianzhou's tone was a little regretful, the excitement on his face was overflowing. "You brat, show off all you want. Other people might not be able to reach this level even after cultivating for many years. You're just showing off after getting the benefits." Hong Tailong laughed out loud. "Late stage small god. Not bad, not bad. Your cultivation is even higher than mine. This old dragon is so envious. Congratulations, master. Congratulations, master." Zhang Peng also flashed over with an envious expression. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but chuckle proudly for a while. Suddenly he spread out his arms, and the yellow dust that filled the sky quickly gathered with the Utopia military camp as the center. Not long later, a khaki-colored earth spirit sculpture stood beside the golden Tailong sculpture. "I'm still missing the wood spirit and the water spirit. I already know that the wood spirit is Mu Yuanzi, and I still don't know where the water spirit is. Now that I have the capital to refine the earth spirit mystic weapon, Mu Yuanzi will be mine sooner or later." Yu Qianzhou sneered and said, "I just don't know what Mu Yuanzi's cultivation is like. I hope he won't disappoint me. Although I haven't seen that Mu Yuanzi before, I reckon that he's at least at the level of a great god. You'll be rich after devouring him." As for the water spirit, Hong Tailong muttered to himself for a while and shook his head slightly. "I don't know if there's a water spirit in the lower three realms, but I heard that the water god in the god realm is a water spirit. But that woman is one of the ancient gods, and her cultivation is terrifyingly high. I'm afraid it's not very possible for you to devour her." Chapter 1203. The water god of the divine world is the water spirit? She's one of the ancient gods? Yu Qianzhou was startled and his facial muscles twitched as he said, "Devouring the ancient gods? I don't have such good teeth. Her cultivation must be at the late ancient god stage, right? To be able to become an ancient god, her cultivation is naturally not simple." Hong Tailong shook his head and said, "She definitely has the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. As for whether it is the late ancient god stage, I don't know." "What do you mean?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Zhang Peng, who was at the side, also pricked up his ears to listen carefully. This level of information wasn't something that could be heard at any time. Usually there wasn't even a place to inquire about it, so he naturally couldn't miss it. Let me explain it to you this way. Hong Tailong pointed to the sky and said, "A long time ago, those great ancient gods already had the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. It can be said that they are the first people in this world to have the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. However, there are two people with higher cultivation, and they are great god Yi and war god. Even my coiling dragon ancestor isn't a match for them. Therefore, I suspect that there is a higher cultivation than the late ancient god stage. The cultivation of Tao is likely to be far beyond the late ancient god stage. Otherwise, how could he suppress the gods? Therefore, I also don't know how high the cultivation of the current water god is. In fact, other than those ancient gods, I reckon that no one knows the cultivation of the ancient gods. You know what I mean, right?" Yu Qianqiu silently digested the contents of his words. After a long time, he slowly sighed and said, "In that case, the demon god who can defeat the other ancient gods must have a cultivation that is beyond our imagination. To defeat him, even if I can devour the water god, I'm afraid I'm still not a match for him." Cough cough. Hong Tailong coughed twice and said, "You're thinking too far ahead. Against a person at that level, even if you add 100,000 Yu Qianqiu together, it still wouldn't be enough to kill him. Do you think that the person who is known as the Divine Realm's #1 expert is just joking around? Let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's settle the matter in front of us first. What about that Azure Sky Tree demon?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and waved at Zhang Peng, signaling him to bring Qing Tian over. Zhang Peng accepted the order and left. After a while, Qing Tian followed behind him leisurely. She seemed to have dressed up meticulously. She was wearing a simple dress, but her waist, breasts, and buttocks were all over the place. She was curvaceous and graceful. Her hair was also carefully combed, making her face look very beautiful. However, when the great devil king saw Hutu and Kintai, who were motionless like two statues on the square, a trace of panic flashed across her face. However, she still maintained her best state and bowed to Yu Qianqiu. After that, she stood there seductively and looked at Yu Qianqiu affectionately. Every frown and movement of her eyes was very attractive. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong looked at each other in dismay. They knew that this woman was still making her final struggle. She wanted to use the only asset she had to save her life. Yu Qianqiu coughed and said, "Qing Tian, it would be a pity to kill such a great beauty like you." Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng immediately looked at him. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. They suspected that he had taken a fancy to her. When the great devil king heard this, her eyes lit up. She immediately twisted her snake-like waist and knelt down. She covered her face and said, "I hope that my lord will take pity on me and give me another chance. I will definitely do my best to repay you. I will definitely not disappoint my lord." Her appearance was really pitiful. "I also can't bear to kill you. How about this? I will give you another chance." Yu Qianqiu pointed at Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng and said, "If you can make one of them fall in love with you, I can be merciful." Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng cried out at the same time. The great devil king looked left and right, then looked at Yu Qianqiu's serious expression. She then slowly stood up and walked toward Hong Tailong. In the end, Hong Tailong's eyes widened like a bull's eyes. He said sternly, "If you dare to come any closer, I will kill you with a single palm strike." The coquettish expression on Qing Tian's face froze. She turned around and weakly walked toward Zhang Peng. She bit her lip and looked like a little wife who had been wronged. However, Zhang Peng was even more direct. He coldly harumphed and said, "Scram." Qing Tian suddenly didn't know what to do. Her eyes turned as she tried to think of a solution. On the stage, Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "Since the two of you don't fancy her, I will reluctantly accept her." As he said this, he had already appeared in front of her and reached out to hug her waist. Joy flashed in the great devil king's eyes. She took the opportunity to lean into his embrace and sob. She sobbed and said, "Thank you, Lord, for not killing me." However, she didn't know that she had met someone who didn't mean what he said. Yu Qianqiu hugged her and raised his hand to slap her head. A layer of yellow soil quickly wrapped around her. Hong Tailong's and Zhang Peng's expressions twitched. They watched as the clear sky demon king, who was wrapped in yellow soil, slowly shrank. Suddenly, the yellow soil exploded, and a yellow pearl landed in Yu Qianqiu's hand. Yu Qianqiu coldly pinched the bead and looked at it. He said to himself in a low voice, "Small god middle stage earth soul mystic weapon. He looked like he could kill without batting an eyelid. He casually tossed the bead onto the ground and it immediately sank. Not long later the ground trembled and many large cracks appeared. A mound of earth rose up and a huge earth person walked out. However, as the earth person's footsteps trembled, there was also the faint sound of thunder. The three of them abruptly raised their heads and looked toward the sky in the distance. Hong Tailong said in astonishment, "Could it be that the Earth Soul mystic weapon can communicate with the heaven and earth aspect?" Yu Qianqiu frowned and closed his eyes. The various scenes in Utopia flashed through his mind. After locking onto the source of the thunderbolts, Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes and bellowed furiously, "What is that stupid woman doing now? What's going on?" Hong Tailong asked, puzzled. Zhang Peng was also at a loss. He didn't know who the stupid woman was. "We'll know once we take a look." Yu Qianqiu pointed at the huge earth person, and it immediately sank into the ground. The ground quickly became flat, and a yellow bead landed in his hand. He waved his hand and the three of them disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already on an island in the Utopia Sea. There were snow-blue thunderbolts crisscrossing in the clear sky. The source of the thunderbolts didn't come from the sky, but from Wen Lanfeng's body. At this moment, Wen Lanfeng was kneeling on the highest peak of the island. His hands were deeply inserted into the soil, and his face was filled with pain. From time to time he would raise his head and let out an extremely dull heh-heh sound. The sound was roaring in his throat, but he tried his best not to let it out. He was like a beast that had been inhumanely abused, and he was clearly forcefully suppressing the endless pain to not let out a sound. His face was flushed red and the veins on his neck were bulging. His lips had been bitten off by himself and blue blood was dripping down. Under his tattered white robe, his muscles were undulating. It was because he was in too much pain, and his muscles were so tense that they were trembling violently. It was unknown how much pain a person had to endure to torture himself to such a horrifying state. The source of the snow-blue thunderbolts that filled the sky came from Wen Lanfeng, who was kneeling on the ground. Majestic energy was constantly released from his body, turning into thunderbolts that dissipated in the air. The scene was shocking, but it was extremely tragic. At the foot of the mountain, Lu Yanqing also knelt on the ground, looking at Wen Lanfeng who was in pain on the top of the mountain, crying inconsolably. Her silver teeth had also bitten through her lips, and her lower jaw was dripping with blood. Her fingers were pinched into the flesh of her palms, and blood was dripping between her fingers. The three people who suddenly appeared stood behind Lu Yanqing, and each of them looked at the scene with a moved expression. At a glance, the three of them knew that Wen Lanfeng was dissipating his cultivation. There was nothing crueler than this for cultivators, especially experts who had not obtained their cultivation easily. It was more painful than killing them and almost no one was willing to do this. The surroundings of the island were stirred up by the release of such a huge amount of energy, and the waves were surging violently. Zhang Peng turned his head to look at his master, who was standing in the wind with a solemn expression. Hong Tailong also suddenly turned his head, looked at Yu Qianqiu and said in a low voice, "We can't let him continue. His cultivation is very useful to us. I will think of a way to make him stop." Yu Qianqiu, whose green robes fluttered in the wind, suddenly reached out and pressed his hand on Hong Tailong's chest. He shook his head slightly and said, "He has already helped me enough. He even died once for me. I will not force him to do anything else. I cannot rely on others forever. I will do the rest myself. Since it is his own decision, as long as he does not regret it, I have nothing to say." Sigh. What a pity. Hong Tailong stomped his feet and sighed. The gruesome scene lasted for 10 days and 10 nights. Yu Qianqiu and the other two watched silently. Such a huge commotion had attracted the attention of almost everyone in Utopia. When the men and women saw what was happening, they were left speechless. After 10 days and 10 nights, the snow-blue thunderbolt released from Wen Lanfeng's body finally disappeared. It was unimaginable how powerful Wen Lanfeng's cultivation had become after releasing such powerful energy for 10 days and 10 nights in a row. However, Wen Lanfeng finally collapsed powerlessly on the top of the mountain, motionless. "Wen Lanfeng!" Lu Yanqing shouted at the top of her voice, which had become hoarse from crying. She flashed to the top of the mountain and sat on the ground with the unconscious Wen Lanfeng in her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Yu Qianqiu slowly let out a breath and flashed to the top of the mountain. The others also followed silently to see what was going on. At this moment, Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue hair had turned black again. His thick snow-blue eyebrows had also returned to black. Red blood flowed out of his bitten lip. The light blue cloud pattern between his eyebrows had also disappeared, and he had returned to his original appearance. His eyes were tightly shut and his face was deathly pale. He immediately pointed at them and scolded, "What do you two want?" The two girls giggled and turned to leave. Xianxia couldn't do anything to them. Suddenly he thought of something and shouted, "Where's your pheasant? How come I haven't seen her for a long time?" When Wu Lixue heard this, she immediately ran back, pulled his arm and said with an aggrieved expression, "I never found a chance to tell you, but when we were in the Divine Ruin Realm, just a few days before the invasion of the demonic path, little sister Phoenix ran out to play and then disappeared." Xianxia was taken aback. "That pheasant is still in the Divine Ruin Realm?" Wu Lixue nodded, hugged his arm and begged, "Can you go to the Divine Ruin Realm and find her?" "I don't have time to find her now. Can't we talk about it later?" Xianxia smiled bitterly. Wu Lixue obediently said, "Oh." She also knew that it was dangerous outside. Besides, the tragedy in the Divine Ruin Realm was still fresh in her memory. She knew that now was not the time to throw a tantrum. After a conversation, the two women looked behind him with a strange expression and left. Xianxia didn't need to look back to know who was standing behind him. He turned to the smiling Bai Suzhen and said, "I really can't let you take that risk." Bai Suzhen smiled calmly and said, "Who said I was going to take the risk? Wenlanfeng is Wenlanfeng. I cultivate the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra of the ancestor of all demons, Taishu Zheng. Taishu Zheng and the demon god used the essence of the blue sea to temper their bodies. I will be fine too." The reason why Wenlanfeng lost his mind was because he didn't master the method. She gently held his hand and said softly, "Don't worry, I will be fine." Xianxia pleaded, "It's really not necessary. Even if you succeed, it will be difficult for you to be the opponent of the demon god. Just think about it, Taishu Zheng was... Who said I must fight with the demon god? I also want to improve my cultivation." Bai Suzhen smiled. Xianxia knew that she didn't mean what she said. She must want to improve her cultivation as soon as possible so that she could help him. But how could he resist her repeated requests? In the end, he reluctantly agreed. On the island in the central hinterland of the Blue Sea Dead Realm, after Xianxia and Bai Suzhen appeared, they first went to the cave in the valley. After worshipping Li Duxing's body, Xianxia sealed the cave. The two flew to the seaside according to the direction of the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. Unexpectedly, when they approached the seaside, they saw someone they didn't want to see. Demon King of Three Nights was standing alone on the reef by the seaside. The two were slightly shocked. Demon King of Three Nights seemed to have heard the commotion. He suddenly turned around and saw the two of them. His pupils shrank and he said sternly, "Xianxia." Almost at the same time, he flung out the scarlet cloak on his shoulder without hesitation. It turned into a blood curtain and instantly enveloped the entire island. Obviously, he wanted to cut off Xianxia's escape route and kill him. Although Demon King of Three Nights' demonic technique was amazing, he underestimated the teleportation ability of Xianxia's star bead. After Xianxia sent Bai Suzhen back to Utopia, a ferocious glint appeared in his eyes. He actually wanted to fight Demon King of Three Nights. At the same time he threw out a yellow bead, Xianxia shouted angrily, "Demon King of Three Nights! Today will be the day you die." The sky-splitting arrow shot out with a whoosh, exploding with boundless golden light. It was like a torrential rain of pear blossoms in the sky. An incomparably majestic aura spread out, and with a boom, the blood curtain that trapped the entire island was directly shattered by the 10,000 divine swords. Demon King of Three Nights immediately felt that something was wrong. He quickly sized up Xianxia and couldn't help but exclaim, "Your cultivation has reached the minor god late stage? How is that possible? Let's see if I can kill you." Xianxia laughed sinisterly. The 10,000 divine swords that exploded the blood curtain were like a meteor shower that shot towards Demon King of Three Nights from all directions. Demonic light glimpse. A red light flashed in Demon King of Three Nights' eyes, and he passed through the sword rain at an unbelievable speed. He raised his sky demon fist and was about to strike out, but suddenly two large hands appeared from the ground below and grabbed him, preventing him from continuing forward. Absorbing Star's great technique. Xianxia's two palms struck out at him. He wanted to see how powerful the Absorbing Star's great technique was with his current cultivation. Demon King of Three Nights immediately felt that the water in his body was rapidly depleting, and he shouted angrily, "Raging Flame Devil Aura!" Black devil flames burst out and quickly enveloped his entire body, completely blocking the Absorbing Star's great technique's power. The two large hands that grabbed him were also shattered into dust by the black devil flames. Demon King of Three Nights' Sky Demon Fist smashed into the ground, and with a bang, the entire island shook. The Earth Soul Mystic Weapon underground was immediately shattered into dust, and there was almost no abnormality on the surface. The power was almost all concentrated on the Earth Soul Mystic Weapon. However, with this delay, he was immediately trapped by the tens of thousands of divine swords. In the moment of danger, Demon King of Three Nights clapped his palms, and used the demonic charm Doppelganger. His body turned into dozens of gray shadows, and like wisps of green smoke, he nimbly swam through the swords. The dozens of gray shadows converged in the air, and once again formed Demon King of Three Nights. He flew a bit too high, and the moment he appeared, he was forced into a fluster by a few fatal beams of light from the blue sea. Below Xianxia's head was an arc of tens of thousands of flying swords, waiting for the enemy, ready to shoot at him at any time. Arrogant. Demon King Three Nights let out a deafening roar. It was a great humiliation for him to be forced into a fluster by someone whose cultivation was lower than his. It was not that he could not defeat Xianxia. If it were not for the fact that he was afraid of those invincible divine swords, he was confident that he could kill Xianxia in a single move. Following an angry roar, a huge fist carrying the power of thunder smashed down from the sky. It could easily turn the entire island into dust. Before the heavy fist even landed, Xianxia was already a bit unsteady from the pressure coming down from above. He finally realized that he was a bit too arrogant, and the difference between them was still very large. He gritted his teeth and yelled, 10,000 swords as one. The tens of thousands of rays of light quickly formed the heaven and earth splitting arrow. The golden light exploded against the strong wind, and the huge heaven and earth splitting arrow shot towards the fist shadow. With a bang, the fist shadow was instantly disintegrated by the sharp arrow, and the 100-meter-long heaven and earth splitting arrow was also sent spinning by the powerful force and stabbed into the sea. Rumble. The trees on the island were smashed into dust by the remaining power of the fist. Countless rocks collapsed in an instant, and Xianxia was also nailed into the ground. His waist was deeply sunk into the ground, and his head was shaken to the point of being dazed. Demon King of Three Nights quickly licked the blood that seeped out from the wound made by the divine arrow. He risked being injured to test the depth of Xianxia's strength, and discovered that it was only SOSO. He revealed a ferocious expression and was about to fight again when his gaze suddenly caught sight of a person with a dull expression on the blue sea surface. It was Yan Zhuixing, who had once again used the blue sea essence to refine his body. Xianxia shook his dazed head and his expression froze. He also discovered Yan Zhuixing, and his eyes immediately lit up. He immediately jumped out of the ground and yelled, "Kill him!" The Earth Soul Profound weapon that was condensed underground broke out of the ground and directly pounced at Yan Zhuixing. Demon King of Three Nights was greatly alarmed. He didn't think that Xianxia would have a helper. He teleported over to rescue him, and the heaven and earth splitting arrow that was stabbed into the sea suddenly turned into tens of thousands of golden rays that shot out like a torrential rain. Chapter 1205. Three Nights had already risked injury to test out Xianxia's depth. At this critical moment he ignored the 10,000 divine swords. In order to save the muddle-headed Yan Zhuixing, he threw caution to the wind and slapped the Earth Soul Profound weapon that was attacking Yan Zhuixing with a shocking palm. As for the Earth and Soul Profound soldier, it did not know what danger was. After receiving Xianxia's instructions, it also threw caution to the wind and did not care about anything else. It allowed Demon King Three Nights' palm strike to come at it with a force that could topple a mountain. It was willing to sacrifice its body to take Yan Zhuixing's life. In the end, with a hong sound, it was really smashed into pieces by Demon King Three Nights' palm strike. A yellow bead fell into the sea. The 10,000 divine swords had already arrived. Demon Monarch Three Night had killed the Earth Soul Profound soldier with a single palm strike. While still in the air, he flipped his body and swept his palm across the surface of the sea. Instantly, a huge wave surged towards the 10,000 divine swords that were shooting over. A huge wave instantly knocked the divine swords flying over. Xianxia and Yan Zhuixing were both people who would kill each other the moment they saw each other. How could they let Three Nights save them so easily? Demon Monarch Three Nights was just about to open his claw and pull Yan Zhuixing away from the surface of the sea when suddenly, the huge wave created by his palm was pushed back by Xianxia using all of his cultivation to use the water art. 10,000 golden lights pierced through the blue wave and attacked again. At the same time, Xianxia shot out like a shooting star from the whirlpool that had suddenly formed in the green wave. In that instant, he ignited the little remaining true samadhi fire in his body and casually grabbed a divine sword beside him. As he raised the sword and slashed, the divine sword suddenly became a huge sword that was 100 meters long. The true samadhi fire covered the sword and he slashed at Demon King 3 Knights. Xianxia threw caution to the wind and fought with all his might. However, Demon King 3 Knights was not someone to be trifled with. With a wave of his hand, the raging inferno devil aura that covered his entire body rushed out like a black whirlwind, directly blocking the godly sword that was slashing down. The black whirlwind sucked in the godly sword, and Demon King 3 Knights casually swung it. Xianxia's cultivation was inferior to his, so the godly sword was directly pulled out of his hand. Under the corrosion of the true samadhi fire, the raging flames devil aura was already quickly dispersing. However, Demon King 3 Knight did not give up on the opportunity to use it. His arm that was controlling the raging flames devil aura spun rapidly, turning the godly swords that he had snatched into a fan. Xianxia grabbed Yan Zhuixing's hair and directly flew out of the sea. He stood on a huge piece of ice floating on the surface of the sea. Demon King 3 Knights also flew out of the sea and landed on a piece of ice less than 10 meters away from Xianxia. However, with the sword on Yan Zhuixing's neck and the true samadhi fire covering his body, Demon King 3 Knights completely cut off any thoughts of rescuing him. Xianxia, as long as you let him go, we can discuss any conditions. Demon King 3 Knights stared at Xianxia in embarrassment and anger. The disdainful aura on his face had already disappeared. He had nowhere to vent his anger. Never in his dreams did he expect Xianxia to capture Yan Zhuixing right under his nose. This was a huge humiliation to him. However, he had to admit that he had indeed underestimated Xianxia today. He had never formally fought against Xianxia before. He had never expected that when they actually fought, Xianxia would actually hide his abilities and catch him off guard time and time again. He had already come to a conclusion in his heart. If he didn't get rid of Xianxia soon, once his cultivation increased, Xianxia would become a great threat to him. So the famous Demon King 3 Knights is only SOSO. Xianxia stared at Demon King 3 Knights, who was afraid of harming Yan Zhuixing, with a mocking expression. He then looked at Yan Zhuixing who was in his hands, and suddenly couldn't help but laugh wildly. A few fatal beams of light shot out from under his feet, but he didn't dodge at all. He continued to stand on the floating ice and laugh wildly, causing the floating ice around him to tremble. Demon King 3 Knights' facial muscles twitched violently. Such mockery was like a slap to his face. How many years had it been? When had he ever been treated like this? Right now he wanted nothing more than to rush up and smash Xianxia into smithereens. However, the chips were in his opponent's hands, so it was no longer up to him. From the start of the fierce battle it seemed like it took a long time, but in reality it happened very quickly. It only took a few sips of tea, but every step was frightening. Victory or defeat was decided by a single thought. Xianxia didn't win because of his cultivation, but because he won by surprise, catching Demon King 3 Knights off guard. However, to dare to face the Demon Lord 3 Knights head-on like this, no matter who saw it, they would have to praise his courage and strategy without any words to describe it. At this moment, the demon blade flashed out of the sea, floating in the air not far away, waiting for an opportunity to swim. It was indeed a divine weapon full of spiritual energy. It actually knew that its master had fallen into someone else's hands, so it didn't dare to act rashly. And Xianxia, who was laughing so hard that he was almost out of breath, also stopped laughing. If he angered the #1 expert in the divine world and he wanted to take revenge, it would be impossible for him to hide. It could be said that there was no way out. Even if he hid in Utopia, Yan Zhuixing could directly tear through the void and arrive in an instant. He could destroy him with a single finger. But at this moment something strange happened. The floating demon blade that was waiting for an opportunity suddenly turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. In between the eyebrows of the giant demon eye in the sky, a crack suddenly appeared, and the demon blade directly entered the crack in the void. Following that, the giant demon eye glanced coldly at Xianxia and disappeared without a trace. The terrifying aura also disappeared. Chapter 1206. What was the meaning of this? Xianxia and Demon Lord 3 Knights had the same question in their minds. The two of them waited there silently for a while. After there was no movement in the air for a while, the two of them gradually came to a realization. The demonic god had taken back the demonic blade he had bestowed to Yan Zhuixing. The two of them were intelligent people. It was not hard to guess the demonic god's intentions. He had clearly given up on protecting Yan Zhuixing. Yu Qianqiu looked at Yan Zhuixing, who had landed in his hands, and his expression twitched. A fierce look flashed in Demon Lord Three Knight's eyes. Just as he moved down from the air, Yu Qianqiu ran faster than a rabbit, disappearing with his belongings. Demon Lord Three Knight's lungs nearly exploded from anger. He immediately roared at the sky, but before he could vent his anger, he was interrupted by a few fatal beams of light. In the courtyard of Ethereal Palace, Bai Suzhen, who had been sent back in advance, was extremely anxious. Hong Tailong and the rest asked about the situation and found out that Yu Qianqiu and Demon Lord Three Knights had clashed. They were also extremely worried. Just as everyone was at a loss, Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Everyone took a closer look and found out that he was fine. They immediately heaved a sigh of relief. When they saw the person he had captured, they were all pleasantly surprised. After Hong Tailong found out what was going on, he laughed out loud on the spot and said, "Great! You actually managed to capture this guy right under Demon Lord Three Knights' nose. Demon Lord Three Knights will definitely be angered to death. Impressive. Truly impressive. How are you going to deal with this guy?" He pointed at Yan Zhuixing. "I heard that there is a cycle of karma. I don't want to make another mortal enemy in my next life and let this bastard have it easy." Yu Qianqiu stared at Yan Zhuixing and said with a sneer, "Yan Zhuixing, from today onwards the grudge between us shall be written off." Just as he said that, the true samadhi fire that enveloped Yan Zhuixing immediately burned fiercely. In just a moment, Yan Zhuixing's body and soul were burned to ashes. Even his hope of reincarnation was completely extinguished. Yan Zhuixing died in a daze and didn't even know how he died. This was probably the best ending for him. Many people present knew that Yan Zhuixing was Yu Qianqiu's mortal enemy. Seeing Yu Qianqiu kill his enemy, everyone was happy for him. However, Yu Qianqiu, who should have been the happiest, didn't look happy at all. After seeing Yan Zhuixing turn into ashes, he who had retracted his samadhi true fire, had a cold expression. He knew that if the god fiend had not given up on protecting Yan Zhuixing, he would not have been able to do anything to Yan Zhuixing. That was not the most important thing. In fact, he had already offended the devil god. He did not know if that madman would take revenge on him. Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. Everyone saw that he didn't look too good and didn't know what was wrong. Yu Qianqiu let out a breath and walked to Bai Suzhen's side. He smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know how the situation in the Blue Sea Death Trap is now. I'm afraid you'll have to postpone your matter for the time being." Bai Suzhen didn't force it and nodded in understanding. Yu Qianqiu turned to look at Hong Tailong and said, "Bring Xinyu along." When Hong Tailong heard this, he immediately knew where Yu Qianqiu wanted to go. He left excitedly. Not long after, he dragged the innocent-looking Xinyu out of the Ethereal Palace. Yu Qianqiu exchanged greetings with everyone. With a wave of his hand, the three of them disappeared before everyone's eyes. After crossing the ice-cold Netherworld River and stepping into the All-Heavens boundary, Xinyu was sent back to Utopia. Looking at the gigantic moon in the sky, the two of them discussed for a while and immediately flew along the Hengduan mountain range at the edge of the All-Heavens boundary. They wanted to see if Bai Changchun was still cultivating at the same place. When they arrived there, they met the three tomb keepers who had been waiting for Bai Changchun back then. When the three of them saw Hong Tailong, they greeted him respectfully. Hong Tailong asked if Bai Changchun had come out yet, and the three of them asked curiously, saying that Bai Changchun had not come out even once. Furthermore, there had been some strange phenomena, causing them to be very worried. When Yu Qianqiu heard that, he looked into the All-Heavens boundary and was also shocked. He saw four Bai Changchun floating in the darkness. Their eyes were closed and their ears were covered. They floated there motionlessly. The four serene Bai Changchun looked exactly the same. There were golden arcs of light constantly surging in and out of their bodies. They appeared very mysterious and magical in the darkness. "How can this be?" Yu Qianqiu said in shock. This. Hong Tailong was also shocked. He said with a dumbfounded expression, "Could he have cultivated to the external embodiment realm?" "That's right. This is also what we are worried about." One of the tomb guards pointed at the four Bai Changchun in the darkness and said, "At first there were only two, then one after another, until now there are four. If it is really the legendary external embodiment realm, then his cultivation progress is too terrifying. At this speed, I'm afraid it won't take too long for him to cultivate to the realm of 10 embodiments. If he cultivates to the legendary realm of transforming into 10 suns in one rage, it will be too terrifying. At that time, who in the mausoleum of the god of sin can stop him? Another tomb guard shook his head and muttered, maybe it's just an illusion. How can a person's cultivation progress be so fast? What is the external embodiment realm? Xianxia asked in confusion. He had heard about the realm of transforming into 10 suns and 1 rage from the great god Yi, but he really didn't know what was going on. When the 3 people heard him ask such a question, they couldn't help but look him up and down in confusion, as if wondering why he had never heard of this before. Hong Tailong looked at Bai Changchun in the darkness and swallowed his saliva. Then he smiled bitterly to Xianxia and said, the most obvious characteristic of reaching the ancient god realm is to cultivate each of the 3 souls and 7 spirits in the body to the same level as the cultivator, so that they can be summoned to help at any time during a battle. Early stage ancient god realm can have 3 incarnations, middle stage ancient god realm can have 6 incarnations, and late stage ancient god realm can have 9 incarnations. Once one cultivates to the realm of 10 incarnations, that is the realm of great perfection. I don't know what cultivation should be called. As for the realm of transforming into 10 suns and 1 rage, it's even more beyond our imagination. According to the legends, only the war god and Yi Xin fought each other. I haven't seen it, so I can't describe it. Xianxia was instantly speechless. He looked at the 4 by Changchun with a dull expression, and his heart was fiercely shocked. Originally, he thought that the speed of his cultivation was fast enough, and he was prepared to show off to old man Bai. Who would have thought that the old man was even more terrifying and had actually reached the realm of external embodiment realm? Then wouldn't his cultivation have already stepped into the ancient god realm? Others might not understand Bai Changchun, but how could he not? He knew that Bai Changchun wouldn't create the so-called illusion as a gimmick, and it might be real. Damn it. This old man's cultivation speed is even more monstrous than monstrous geniuses. He's simply a super monstrous genius. Xianxia cursed inwardly. He realized that he really couldn't compare himself with this person, otherwise he would really be infuriated. He forcefully seized someone else's cultivation and fused it for his own use. His cultivation speed was already fast enough, but compared to the old man's rapid cultivation speed, it really paled in comparison. Xianxia, is your master joking or is he serious? Don't scare me. Hong Tailong's voice sounded in his ears. Should be fake. Xianxia shook his head and replied secretly, forget it. Let's go about our business. Hong Tailong immediately coughed, and pretended to remind the 3 of them to continue to keep a close watch on Bai Changchun. After that, he flew away with Xianxia. After they were far away from the 3's line of sight, Hong Tailong began to ask seriously, what are you going to do? With our cultivation, if we forcefully do it, it will be very difficult for us to succeed if we encounter a tough opponent. Moreover, once we alert the enemy, it will be troublesome to do it again in the future. I've already thought of a way before I came. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here so easily. Xianxia looked around, and after confirming that there was no one around, he transmitted his voice. I see that your identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy is quite useful. How about this, we split up? Once we find the target, you should be able to use your identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy to deceive the tomb guards. After you deceive them, you should be able to use your identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy to deceive the tomb guards. After you deceive them, you can immediately transmit a message to me, and I will rob the tomb at the fastest speed possible. This way no one will know. Hong Tailong turned pale with fright. How can we do that? Once this matter spreads out, where will our Dragon Clan put our face? This matter will incur the wrath of the masses in the immortal realm. If the old ancestor finds out, he will definitely not forgive me. Damn it. What are you shouting for? Are you afraid that others won't know? Xianxia punched him, and Hong Tailong knew that he had misspoken. He immediately fell silent and looked around vigilantly. Xianxia moved closer and transmitted his voice in a low voice. You are usually a quick-witted dragon. Why are you acting like a fool now? If we rob the tomb openly, won't your identity as a Dragon Clan member be exposed? Furthermore, it will be exposed even faster. Listen to me. You just have to be careful and lure them away. With the miraculous effects of my earth art, we can secretly rob the tomb. Who will be able to tell? Actually, this is the safest method. Even if someone finds out that the tomb is empty in the future, who would dare to frame the Dragon Clan without any evidence? Besides, even if old ancestor Coiling Dragon finds out, don't you still have me? What are you afraid of? This. Hong Tailong asked doubtfully, are you serious? If the old ancestor really finds out, Don't go back on your word. Damn you. I Yu Qianqiu mean what I say. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish speaking, Hong Tailong immediately came to his senses. He felt like he had almost fallen into a trap. He waved his hands in horror and said, "Don't even think about it. I won't do it even if you beat me to death." Yu Qianqiu immediately realized that there was a problem with the way he spoke. The words "mean what I say means what I say" should not be repeated multiple times in front of the same person. This was the golden rule. Hence, his face instantly darkened. He grabbed Hong Tailong and said, "I say, are you stupid? Why didn't you think about it? Old ancestor Coiling Dragon is not picky with so many people. Why did he choose you to carry out this mission? Isn't it because you are flexible? Besides, I came to rob the tomb this time to refine a few more Earth Soul mystic weapons and settle the score with Mu Yuanzi. Don't forget, if it wasn't for Mu Yuanzi secretly instructing Jin Tai to obtain the soul-transforming smoke, your old friend Yi Tiankong wouldn't have died to the soul-transforming smoke and you wouldn't have been trapped for 100,000 years. This is also revenge for you. Don't take my kindness for granted. Are you doing it or not?" Chapter 1207. Goading Hong Tailong, who had done many bad things in the past, had no effect on him. However, when it came to revenge, Hong Tailong's expression turned ugly. After all, being trapped for 100,000 years wasn't a good memory. Indeed, we can't let that old thing get away with it. How many tragedies in the three realms are caused by that old thing hiding behind the scenes? Why do we have to live and die while he enjoys his life as if nothing happened? Hong Tailong gritted his teeth and said hatefully, "This old dragon will make him pay no matter what." This was equivalent to a promise. Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder with great relief and said, "That's right. You're not a gentleman if you don't take revenge. This is how Hong Tailong should be." Hong Tailong rolled his eyes and said snappily, "Don't be sarcastic. After taking care of that old thing, you're still the one who benefits the most." "You can't say that." Yu Qianqiu said sternly, "Do you think it's easy for me to fight with my life on the line? At the end of the day, I'm still selling my life for your dragon race. Do you think I like living a life of licking blood on the edge of a knife? If I don't improve my cultivation, how can I fulfill the mission of your dragon race's old ancestor Coiling Dragon to administer punishment on behalf of heaven?" Seeing that he brought up the matter of administering punishment on behalf of heaven, Hong Tailong had nothing else to say. The two discussed the details together and left one after the other. Under the bright moonlight, the two looked at each other from afar. They wandered around the mausoleum of the god of divinity like wandering gods at night, looking for a suitable target. After half a day, Hong Tailong suddenly landed from the sky. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he quickly landed to hide his tracks. He hid behind a rock and observed with his eyes, waiting for news from the front. Not long after, he saw two streams of light flying away in the distance. Hong Tailong's voice transmission followed. "This is the tomb of the virtuous heavenly monarch. He also has the cultivation of a late-stage great god. You better be quick. If I take too long, I'll arouse suspicion." "Got it." Yu Qianqiu leapt out from the rock and flew close to the ground under the cover of the terrain. When he saw the blood jade red crystal tomb, he immediately drilled into the ground and used the earth escape technique to enter the tomb. The situation in the grave was exactly the same as that in Honghua Starlord's grave. A man was lying on the blood jade crystal bed as if he was asleep. Strands of red light seeped through the blood jade red crystals on the dome and concentrated on the body. Although the scene looked strange, it was not the first time that Yu Qianqiu had encountered it. He was already immune to it. Yu Qianqiu couldn't tell if the other party's cultivation was really at the late-stage great god. He took a closer look and imitated Hong Tailong's method. He touched the corpse of the virtuous heavenly monarch with both hands and used his divine sense to check at close range. As a result, he found that the cultivation of the virtuous heavenly monarch was only at the mid-stage great god. It was the same as Honghua Star Lord. This caused Yu Qianqiu, who had repeatedly touched the corpse to examine it, to fall into deep thought. He reckoned that after a person died in battle, their cultivation base would be somewhat damaged. It was impossible for their cultivation base to remain intact like it was when they were healthy. He didn't dare to waste too much time. He clawed at the corpse with his 5 claws. A thin yellow earth armor wrapped the corpse of the virtuous heavenly monarch. It gradually shrank as it squirmed. After a while, the fused earth ball exploded, and a yellow bead fell into his hand. After getting his hands on the item, Yu Qianqiu immediately drilled out of the bright red tomb space. After escaping through the earth, he transmitted his voice to Hong Tailong. "I got it. I'll wait for you at the front. The process could be said to be extremely smooth. Not long after, Hong Tailong flashed over. He couldn't wait to inspect his spoils of war. Yu Qianqiu waved the earth soul in his hand proudly and said, "It's done. I told you it's very safe this way." Hong Tailong snatched the earth soul and weighed it in his hand. He nodded repeatedly while clicking his tongue. However, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but ask curiously, "What reason did you use to lure the tomb guardian away?" "I used the excuse of inquiring about your master's background. I didn't expect that the other party would really hate your master so much. He could be said to be very cooperative." Hong Tailong returned the earth soul to him disapprovingly. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. After thinking about it, he didn't think much of it. This was indeed a good reason. Hong Tailong seemed to be very addicted to doing this kind of thing. He rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "I also asked him about the nearby situation. There are still a few tombs nearby. Let's hurry." Yu Qianqiu naturally didn't have any objections. The two of them immediately acted according to the old rules and quickly left one after the other. The two of them busied themselves non-stop for a month. Hong Tailong's identity as the Dragon Clan's emissary was very useful. There was basically no trouble at all. At most, some people didn't treat their guests very warmly. However, they were still quite cooperative. The two of them spent most of their time running around on the road. If they continued like this, the news of the Dragon Clan's emissary arriving at the mausoleum of the gods' mausoleum would probably spread everywhere. However, Yu Qianqiu never showed his face. This made Hong Tailong very depressed. He was more or less worried that things would get out of hand if things got out of hand. However, Yu Qianqiu took out a pile of spoils of war and told him that since they had already done it, there was no point in stopping now. Since that was the case, they should just continue. After checking the spoils of war, there were 80 earth souls, 10 fire souls and 10 gold souls. There were 16 late-stage Great God Realm, 30 mid-stage Great God Realm, and 54 early-stage Great God Realm. The 16 late-stage Great God Realm Earth Soul Bandits were all early-stage Ancient God Realm tombs. Unfortunately, their cultivation was not completely preserved after they died, and all of them had dropped by one level. As for the minor God Realm tombs, the two of them had no interest in wasting time. In any case, there were still many great tombs waiting for them. Moreover, it wouldn't be worth it if they failed miserably for the sake of minor God Realm tombs. In a month's time, they had raided exactly 100 tombs. Hong Tailong held a large pile of weapon souls in his hands and said cheerfully, "With so many helpers, I reckon there shouldn't be a problem sweeping through the 3 realms. Should we go and settle the score with Muyuanzi now? We have a strong army and strong horses." Yu Qianqiu sighed ruefully as he put away the weapon souls in his hands. After pondering for a while, he said, "I don't have enough true samadhi fire. This thing will probably have a great restraining effect on Muyuanzi. To be on the safe side, I'll have to refine some true samadhi fire first, just in case." Hong Tailong didn't have any objections. The two of them made a sign that the tomb raiding mission was temporarily suspended. They were prepared to continue the next time they came here, so that they wouldn't have to waste time. After that, the two of them disappeared from the mausoleum of the god of sin. Their first stop was the human world that was sealed. They went to the underground where Hong Tailong was trapped and collected enough green fire. After that, they directly rushed to the fairy realm and openly killed their way to the other human world. This was something that couldn't be helped. The passageway to the netherworld in the demon realm had already disappeared, and even the netherworld flames were nowhere to be seen. If they wanted to collect black fire, they could only go to the other human realm. As a result, Demon King 3 Knights chased after them. However, by the time he arrived, Yu Qianqiu had already absorbed all the black fire and left first. It wasn't that Yu Qianqiu wanted to avoid him, nor was it because he was afraid of him. Now that Yu Qianqiu had over 100 divine-grade mystic weapons in his hands, there was no need for him to be afraid of him. Instead, he was eager to devour Muyuanzi to raise his cultivation. As for Demon King 3 Knights, he was prepared to turn around and eliminate him along with the Devil Dao. Today you, the local tyrant who has been hiding behind the 3 realms, has met your end. Fang Xingjian then walked up to the ancient language tree. Following the method Jintai had told him to contact Muyuanzi for 3 nights, he slapped down on the ancient language tree. Dull thumping sounds rang out, and the entire ancient language tree started to tremble intensely. Even the ground trembled slightly. Hong Tailong, who was hiding in the river, could not help but extend his head out to take a peek. In the end, he discovered that Yu Qianqiu was looking in his direction and even glared at him fiercely. Hong Tailong smiled awkwardly and sank back into the water. Chapter 1208. Thump, thump. Xianxia stood under the tree with an indifferent expression as he continued to strike the ancient tree with palm after palm. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew and the golden leaves, which looked like countless golden flowers, let out a strange ing-ing sound. The ancient language tree in the ancient forest was the same as the ancient language tree in the woodkiller sea. The phenomenon here immediately caused a chain reaction in the other world. The ancient language tree on the hill in the woodkiller sea also let out a strange mournful wail. In the ancient treehouse at the center of the wood monster sea plains, Lu was quietly cultivating. Muyuanzi's ears twitched slightly as he sat opposite her with his eyes closed. He frowned and slowly opened his eyes. Gently picking up the wooden staff beside him, he disappeared from the treehouse. He quickly landed under the ancient language tree on the hillside. Looking at the ancient language tree trembling violently in the wind, he couldn't help but let out a cold snort. He pointed the wooden staff in his hand at the ancient language tree, and green ripples immediately appeared on the thick trunk. A window opened, peeking at the outside world. When he saw that it was Xianxia standing there and hitting the tree trunk, he couldn't help but be stunned. At first, he thought it was Demon King Three Knights who had come to disturb him, but he didn't expect it to be Xianxia. What puzzled him was how Xianxia knew how to contact him through the ancient language tree. "You still dare to cause trouble here?" Muyuanzi let out a cold shout and angrily waved the wooden staff in his hand. The windows on the ancient language tree disappeared, and a wall of light appeared. He stepped out. When Xianxia saw the mercury-like light wall appear, he stopped attacking the ancient language tree and stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at the furious Muyuanzi walking out of nowhere. "Xianxia, do you really think I don't dare to kill?" Muyuanzi slammed the wooden staff into the ground, and the wall of light behind him disappeared. Xianxia said expressionlessly, "Of course you dare, but it depends on the person. For example, if the Demon King Three Knights were here, you wouldn't dare to kill anyone." Muyuanzi was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect Xianxia to be so calm when he saw him. He quickly looked around, and when he discovered that Xianxia's cultivation had actually reached the late minor god stage, he was shocked. He couldn't imagine how his cultivation had risen so quickly. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and said, "I was wondering why you had the guts to speak to me like this. It turns out that your cultivation has improved and you have something to rely on. However, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. There's still quite a gap between your early-stage minor god cultivation base and mine. It's not up to you to act presumptuously in front of me." "I'm not being presumptuous. I'm just here to get even with you," Xianxia said calmly. Seeing his confident expression, Muyuanzi couldn't help but laugh and say, "You want to settle accounts with me? Then I'm all ears. How are you going to get even with me?" "There's something I want to ask you." Xianxia extended a finger. "I just want to ask you one thing. Were you the one who told the Demon King Three Knights the method to open the realm of the divine ruin?" Muyuanzi looked at his pretentious appearance and sneered. "So what if I was? As long as you admit it." Xianxia took a deep breath. "Then I'll tell you. Because of what you've done, over 1 million of my cultivators in the realm of the divine ruins were slaughtered by the Demon King Three Knights. Over 1 million lives. How can I let you go?" Muyuanzi was startled. Although he was the one who told Three Knights the method to open the realm of the divine ruin, he really didn't know that Three Knights had killed so many people. He furrowed his brows and said in a gentler tone, "So what? I wasn't the one who killed them. You should be getting even with the Demon King Three Knights. Do you think that just because you're no match for Three Knights you can be my match? What a huge joke. Looks like it'll be very difficult for you to admit your mistake. No matter, it's your fault, so you can't run." Xianxia suddenly sneered. "As for Three Knights, you don't need to worry about him. After I've taken care of you, I'll go take care of him next. Moreover, I'll completely eradicate the entire demon Dao." Such big words. Muyuanzi didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. He seemed to be mocking Xianxia for overestimating himself. However, halfway through his laughter, his face stiffened. He teleported into the air and saw a pair of steel claws suddenly emerge from the ground where he was just standing, almost grabbing onto his feet. Fortunately, he was quite experienced in taking root in the ground as a wood spirit and sensed that something was wrong ahead of time. Seeing that his sneak attack was ineffective, Xianxia couldn't help but feel a bit of pity. He realized that this old fellow really did have some tricks up his sleeve. He was actually able to escape the sneak attack of a late-stage Great God Golden Soul Profound Soldier. With a wave of his hand, the 10 Golden Soul Profound Soldiers, 10 Earth Soul Profound Soldiers, and 2 fire soul profound soldiers that were hiding in the red rocks emerged and stood majestically beside him. True Samadhi fire. Mu Yuanzi cried out involuntarily. His pupils abruptly shrank as he looked at the 2 fire soul profound soldiers. He then swept his gaze over the other monsters. He could be considered a knowledgeable person, but this was the first time he had seen this kind of monster. When he discovered that these monsters all had high cultivation, he immediately understood why Yu Qianzhou was so confident. He then shouted sternly, "You really have something to rely on, no wonder you dare to come find trouble with this old man. However, I'm afraid your wishful thinking will fail. This old man can return to Wood Massacre Sea at any time. You Yu Qianzhou can't do anything to me. Mu Yuanzi, I advise you not to bring the flames of war to Wood Massacre Sea unless you want Lu to see you die with her own eyes." Yu Qianzhou slowly walked out from under the ancient language tree and said in a low voice, "Up until now, as long as I've been to a place, no one can stop me from going a second time. I can enter and exit the sealed divine ruin realm as I please. I can do the same for your Wood Massacre Sea. If you don't believe me, you can try. Obediently surrender and I'll give you a quick death." After saying that, he waved his hand again. 70 Earth Soul Mystic soldiers suddenly emerged from the bottom of the cliff and the surrounding forest. They flew into the air and surrounded Mu Yuanzi. Hong Tai Long, who was hiding in the river, also jumped out. He pointed at Mu Yuanzi in the air and cursed, "Old thing. You also have a day like this. Today this old dragon will settle the debt of the soul-transforming smoke 100,000 years ago with you." Mu Yuanzi didn't have the mood to reply to him. He was looking around as if he was facing a great enemy. The shock in his heart was indescribable. He couldn't imagine where Yu Qianzhou had gotten so many experts in monsters. The situation was clear at a glance. It was impossible for him to be a match for so many experts in monsters. If he fought, he would definitely die. Suddenly, Mu Yuanzi waved the wooden staff in his hand. A wall of light appeared. He didn't believe that Yu Qianzhou could enter and exit Wood Massacre Sea as he pleased. Therefore, the wisest choice was to hide in Wood Massacre Sea. However, how could Yu Qianzhou let him escape so easily? A thought flashed in his mind: stop him. Even though the wall of light could be activated quickly, it would still take some time. For the profound soldiers with profound cultivation, it was more than enough to stop him. A late-stage Great God Fire Soul Mystic soldier teleported over. The huge body of Samadhi True Fire directly blocked the wall of light. It waved its 5 claws and clawed at Mu Yuanzi. Mu Yuanzi quickly teleported away. However, the profound soldiers surrounded him from all directions and completely cut off his escape route. They all launched attacks at him. The wall of light, which was only half activated, instantly disintegrated after losing the support of his magic power. Mu Yuanzi's expression changed drastically. He knew that he wouldn't be able to escape today. However, he wouldn't allow himself to be captured without a fight. The wooden staff in his hand suddenly exploded into countless wooden vines that were like spiritual snakes. In an instant, the sky was filled with spiritual aura. The wooden vines instantly entangled all the profound soldiers. Taking advantage of the momentary gap, Mu Yuanzi's gaze suddenly locked onto Yu Qianzhou. He decided to capture the leader first. As long as he captured Yu Qianzhou, all the threats would be easily resolved. With a swoosh, he teleported out of the encirclement of the profound soldiers. This was an opportunity that he had obtained at the cost of losing the wooden staff. Yu Qianzhou's eyes narrowed. The moment he met the other party's gaze, he guessed the other party's scheme. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He had long prepared to defend himself. Tens of thousands of golden lights exploded from his sleeves and shot out like thunder. They directly forced Mu Yuanzi, who had teleported over, to reveal himself. Mu Yuanzi, who was pale with fright, was instantly pierced by several divine swords. He didn't expect that Yu Qianzhou would have such a divine weapon in his hands that could easily break through his defenses. At the same time, dozens of explosions rang out behind him. The profound soldiers directly used brute force to detonate the wooden vines that were entangling them. The Fire Soul Mystic soldier completely disregarded the wooden vines and took the initiative to burn through the layers of obstacles before chasing after Mu Yuanzi. The remaining tens of thousands of divine swords rapidly formed a sword net and instantly charged forward. The divine swords that were stuck in Mu Yuanzi's body expanded and instantly sliced Mu Yuanzi into several pieces. However, Mu Yuanzi's body was like flowing water. The moment his body was cut open, it rapidly fused back together. Seeing that there were incomparably sharp divine weapons obstructing him and power soldiers chasing behind him, Mu Yuanzi quickly teleported to the ground. Like the deep roots of an old tree, he directly pierced a hole in the hard rocky ground and disappeared into the ground like a wisp of green smoke. The two fire soul mystic soldiers that had caught up to him at almost the same time spat out a fire dragon and chased into the ground. Ah! Muyuanzi screamed miserably underground. 10 gold soul mystic soldiers and earth soul mystic soldiers quickly tunneled into the ground in pursuit. Boom! A dozen holes were blasted open on the side of the transverse cliff. The 10 squads of profound soldiers forced the fleeing Muyuanzi out of the cliff in the blink of an eye. Muyuanzi's figure once again entered the dense forest below the cliff. The fire soul mystic soldiers and earth soul mystic soldiers on the cliff immediately gave chase. The moment Muyuanzi entered the dense forest, he displayed his might. After all, this ancient forest was his territory and he definitely had the home ground advantage. In the boundless ancient forest, the giant trees swelled like the waves of the sea. Countless giant wooden arms blocked the pursuing enemies. Although they could not stop the powerful earth soul mystic soldiers, they were able to delay their pursuit. However, the two fire soul mystic soldiers were like the vanguards. The true samadhi fire on their bodies surged and burned the wood demons in the forest until they wailed and howled. They were about to catch up to Muyuanzi. Muyuanzi had no choice but to flee underground. The 80 earth soul mystic soldiers that followed closely behind the fire soul mystic soldiers were like fish in water. They all plunged into the ground. The 2 fire soul mystic soldiers and 10 gold soul mystic soldiers immediately destroyed the eyesores of the tree demons below them, preventing Muyuanzi from escaping through the sky. You're tuning in to this Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.